Imagine standing on the edge of the world, where the earth gives way to an ocean of frozen stillness. The air here is impossibly crisp, carrying the faint, clean scent of pure winter. It is the deep of night, a polar night, where the sky's not black, but a rich, velvety indigo, dusted with the silver light of 1 billion ancient stars. Beneath this quiet sky lies a sprawling expanse of ice, resting like a slumbering giant. A single, delicate snowflake descends from the stillness above. It falls slowly, turning and drifting on an imperceptible breeze before coming to rest upon the vast white canvas. In this place, time does not hurry. It does not rush forward. It settles, it thickens, it crystallizes. The silence here is profound. It is not an empty silence, but a heavy, comforting quiet, the sound of the earth breathing in its slowest, deepest rhythm. The moonlight washes over the ridges and valleys of the ice, painting soft shadows in shades of lavender and silver. It is a landscape of pure peace, entirely removed from the urgency of the waking world. As we begin to wander across this quiet, frozen river tonight, I invite you to leave the burdens of the day at the edge of the ice. You're stepping into a sanctuary of slow time. As the details of this magnificent world unfold around you, remember that you do not need to try to remember anything. There is no test waiting for you, no task to complete, no effort required. Let the mind soften, just as the snow softens the hard edges of the mountains. Let these ideas drift through your awareness like falling snow. What stays, stays, and what melts away is meant to leave. Allow the sound of my voice to be a gentle wind carrying you deeper into relaxation. You're safe here. Your only purpose is to rest, to let go, and to allow the gentle wonder of the ice to lull you into a deep, restorative sleep. As you imagine walking softly over the frosted surface, feeling the gentle crunch of fresh powder beneath you, consider the ground you are resting upon. This is not merely frozen water. In the slow, deliberate language of geology, the glacier beneath you is a vast, continuous expanse of solid rock. When snow falls and survives the gentle warmth of summer, it is buried by the soft snows of the following year. Year after year, decade after decade, the delicate, feathery crystals are gently pressed together. The air between them is slowly exhaled by the weight from above. The snow transforms first into granular fern, and then, under immense pressure, the crystals fuse. They lock together into a massive interlocking grid. Because it is formed from a single naturally occurring solid compound, ice, and because it has been fundamentally altered by pressure over vast stretches of time, a glacier is officially classified as a metamorphic rock. You're resting upon a stone born of the sky, a crystalline monolith carved not by heat or fire, but by the quiet accumulation of 1 million quiet winters. It is a comforting thought to know that something so light and ephemeral as a drifting snowflake can, with enough time and patience, build a mountain of stone. Deep within the heart of this crystalline stone, a subtle and breathtaking transformation of light occurs. If you were to peer into a deep, smooth crevasse descending into the heart of the glacier, you would notice the colour shifting softly around you. At the surface, the fractured snow scatters all the light of the sun and moon, reflecting a brilliant, blinding white. But as you look deeper, down to where the ice has been squeezed completely free of air bubbles, the white gives way to an ethereal, luminous blue. This is not a trick of the sky reflected on the surface. It is a true colour, born of the ice itself. Water molecules contain a delicate chemical bond that vibrates, and when pure, dense ice is struck by light, it acts as a gentle filter. The ice slowly absorbs the warmer colours of the visual spectrum, the reds, the oranges and the yellows, swallowing them softly into the frozen depths. The only light that possesses the energy to escape, to scatter and return to your eye is a cool, tranquil blue. It is a colour that exists nowhere else in nature. a deep glowing sapphire that is essentially the visual echo of ancient light, filtered through centuries of patient pressure. It is the perfect colour of absolute calm. That same patient pressure is continuously at work at the very base of the glacier, hidden beneath hundreds of feet of solid ice. Here, where the frozen river meets the ancient bedrock of the mountain, a slow and unseen artistry is taking place. As the massive weight of the glacier shifts and glides over the earth, it acts like a colossal piece of fine, polishing stone. The ice gently grips loose stones and boulders, dragging them across the bedrock in an impossibly slow embrace. This immense friction quietly pulverizes the stone beneath it, grinding it down into particles so microscopically fine that they are beautifully known as glacial flour. When the gentle warmth of spring finally touches the lower reaches of the ice, delicate trickles of meltwater gather this rock flour and carry it down the valley into deep alpine lakes. Because the particles are so incredibly small and weightless, they do not sink to the bottom. They remain suspended in the cold water, hanging delicately in the water column. When sunlight hits these suspended particles, it reflects back to the sky in brilliant opaque shades of turquoise, aquamarine, and emerald. The stunning milky jewel tones of high mountain lakes are simply the gentle memory of the glacier's quiet passage over the stone, painted into the water. Though a glacier may appear to the naked eye as a static, immovable object frozen perfectly in time, it is in reality a river in perpetual motion. It is a testament to the illusion of stillness, the sheer weight of the ice, combined with the unyielding, gentle pull of gravity, fundamentally changes the physical nature of the glacier. Deep within the core, roughly 150 feet below the surface, the ice no longer behaves like a brittle, shattering solid. It yields to the pressure, becoming pliable and malleable, acting much more like thick, warm honey or soft wax. This deep layer engages in a fascinating process called plastic deformation, allowing the entire structure to slowly, continuously slide and stretch across the landscape. The movement is entirely imperceptible to a casual observer, often measuring only a few gentle millimeters a day. Yet, with infinite patience, this incredibly slow flow possesses the power to carve massive, beautifully rounded valleys through the hardest granite, smoothing the jagged edges of mountains and reshaping the face of the earth without making a single sound. It is a beautiful reminder that immense strength does not require speed or loud force. Sometimes, the most profound and lasting changes occur in the quietest, slowest moments. As we shift our gaze gently back to the sunlit surface of the slow-moving ice, we can discover a hidden world in miniature. Drifting on the high atmospheric winds, tiny specks of dust travel across oceans and continents to land upon the stark white expanse. This fine dust, known as cryoconite, is a mixture of desert sand, volcanic ash, and sometimes even microscopic particles of meteorites from the vastness of outer space. Because these dark particles absorb the gentle warmth of the sun much faster than the reflective white ice around them, they begin to quietly melt their way downward. Over the weeks and months of summer, a single speck of dust can melt a perfectly cylindrical, water-filled shaft into the glacier, creating a tiny sapphire blue well. These tranquil little pools, scattered across the ice like resting coins, become miniature sanctuaries. They trap heat, shielding their interiors from the biting wind, and within these quiet, freezing waters, entirely unique micro-ecosystems begin to thrive. Microscopic life forms perfectly adapted to the chill find a home in these tiny water droplets melting into the ice. It is a comforting realization that even in the most seemingly barren, frozen landscapes on Earth, life quietly finds a way to build a warm and sheltered home. And life on the surface of the ice is not always microscopic or completely still. In some rare and magical corners of the glacial world, there exists a gentle phenomenon that looks like something out of a soft fairy tale. Scattered across the flat, white plains of ice, One might find small, soft spheres of bright green moss resting lightly on the surface. These are affectionately known to scientists as glacier mice. They begin when a simple, drifting spore of moss takes root on a small pebble resting on the ice. As the moss slowly grows, creating a soft, insulating cushion, the ice directly beneath it is protected from the sun, leaving the moss elevated on a tiny pedestal of ice. Eventually, the pedestal melts away, and the soft moss ball gently tumbles down. But they do not simply stop. Guided by the subtle melting of the ice and the gentle nudges of the wind, these soft green spheres slowly roll across the glacier. They turn entirely over the course of several days, ensuring that every side of the moss receives the life-giving sunlight it needs to survive. And strangely, beautifully, entire colonies of these glacier mice have been observed migrating together, rolling in unison across the ice at a peaceful pace of an inch a day, a slow, silent herd of soft green life travelling across the white expanse. Beneath the tumbling moss, hidden deep within the microscopic fissures of the ice itself, lives an even more remarkable resident. Deep in the chilled heart of the glacier, weaving smoothly through the crystalline lattice, are creatures known as ice worms. These tiny thread-like beings are an absolute marvel of graceful adaptation. While most living things naturally seek warmth, the ice worm has evolved to embrace the cold so completely that it thrives in temperatures right at the freezing point of water. Their bodies quietly produce unique antifreeze proteins that allow them to move comfortably through the slush and water-filled veins of the glacier without freezing solid. They spend their days hidden in the deep blue dark, protected from the harsh light of the sun above. But as the evening approaches and the shadows lengthen softly across the ice, a subtle shift occurs. As the light softens into dusk, millions of these tiny creatures gently rise to the surface of the glacier, navigating the frozen labyrinth to feed quietly on snow algae and pollen that has drifted down from the sky. They are perfectly content in the cold, so beautifully attuned to their icy home that the simple warmth of a human hand, or even room temperature air, would cause them to safely melt away. They are a quiet testament to the idea that comfort and peace can be found in the most unexpected of places. From the microscopic threads of life within the ice, let us gently pull back and imagine the glacier as a whole, appreciating the sheer, unimaginable scale of its resting presence. A glacier is not merely a feature resting lightly upon the landscape. It is a weight that softly reshapes the world on a planetary level. The accumulation of millions of tons of dense, crystallized water creates a mass so profoundly heavy that it physically bends the solid crust of the Earth. Beneath the surface, the Earth's crust floats gently upon the slow-moving, semi-liquid mantle. When a massive ice sheet forms over millennia, its gentle but unrelenting downward pressure causes the crust to yield, creating a shallow, wide dimple in the very skin of the planet, a process known as isostatic depression. The continent literally bows beneath the quiet majesty of the ice, sinking lower into the Earth's mantle, just as a soft bed yields comfortably to the weight of a sleeping body. It is a slow, harmonious interaction between the cold, rigid ice and the deep, warm Earth, an embrace that lasts for thousands of years, holding the landscape in a deep, suspended cradle of pressure and time. Within this heavy, cradled mass of ice, history itself is held in perfect, quiet suspension. As those delicate snowflakes fall year after year, slowly compressing into solid blue stone, they trap incredibly tiny pockets of air between their crystalline arms. As the ice solidifies, these microscopic bubbles are sealed away completely from the outside world, creating a flawless frozen vault. The deeper you go into a glacier, the older the ice becomes and the older the air trapped within it. Millions of tiny, sparkling bubbles scattered through the dark blue depths contain actual, pristine samples of the Earth's atmosphere from thousands, even millions of years ago. Within these tiny spheres of nothingness rests the literal breath of the ancient world. It is the wind that blew across forgotten prehistoric forests, the air that carried the dust of empires that rose and fell before written history even began. All of it is held completely still, perfectly preserved, waiting in silent darkness. It is deeply calming to realize that the past is not lost or gone, but safely stored away, meticulously and lovingly archived by the slow, protective embrace of the falling snow. And because the ice is alive with internal movement, gentle pressure, and trapped breath, it is not entirely silent. If you were to stand very still on the surface of a vast glacier, beneath the soft starlight, and listen not with your ears, but with your entire body, you might perceive a low rhythmic vibration. Glaciers sing. As the massive body of ice stretches and flows, as internal cracks slowly form and heal in the depths, and as the cold wind blows smoothly across the deep open mouths of crevasses, the glacier produces a continuous spectrum of sound. Much of this sound is infrasonic, a frequency so incredibly deep and low that it falls entirely below the threshold of human hearing. Yet, it resonates constantly through the air and the bedrock, a constant subsonic hum echoing gently through the mountain valleys. It is a slow, geological lullaby, a peaceful song composed of friction, gravity, and wind. The mountain is playing the ice like a colossal, silent instrument, generating a soothing, eternal vibration that can be felt by the animals of the valley and the earth itself. It is the deep, comforting voice of the slumbering giant, singing itself gently to sleep in the quiet of the endless polar night. That deep, continuous vibration resonates through a structure that is far more complex than simple frozen water. If you were to somehow hold a piece of ancient glacial ice in your hand and examine its architecture, you would not find the small, fragile cubes we create in our homes or the delicate, feathery flakes that fall from the sky. Through centuries of immense, steady pressure, the microscopic boundaries between individual snowflakes begin to dissolve and perfectly merge. Over thousands of years of unbroken silence, they reorganize themselves into massive, single, flawless crystals. In the deepest, oldest layers of the ice, where the light has turned a deep sapphire blue, a single crystal of frozen water can grow to the size of a baseball, and sometimes even as large as a human head. These giant crystals, known as megacrysts, fit together like an impossibly intricate, transparent puzzle, interlocking so tightly that neither air nor water can pass between them. It is a slow, invisible metamorphosis, a testament to what can be built when time stretches out over millennia, allowing atoms to gently align into their most perfect, stable forms. As you picture these massive, interlocking gems of ice, you can allow your own thoughts to settle into a quiet, stable rhythm. The mind can simply drift, finding its own natural, peaceful structure in the silence of the night. Drifting back up from the crystalline depths, we find that the surface of the glacier is equally sculpted by the slow, patient hands of nature. High in the alpine air, where the sunlight is direct, clear, and unhindered by the atmosphere below, the vast fields of snow do not remain perfectly flat. The warmth of the sun, interacting subtly with the steady mountain wind, carves the surface into an endless repeating pattern of shallow scoop depressions, known affectionately as sun cups. They resemble a gentle frozen sea of honeycomb, each smooth bowl softly catching the light and creating a delicate interplay of brilliant blinding white and cool, resting blue shadow. As the sun moves slowly across the arc of the sky, these shadows lengthen and shift, giving the stationary ice the magnificent illusion of gentle, breathing movement. In some extremely dry, high-altitude regions, this solar sculpting goes even further, slowly shaping the ice into towering, graceful spires called penitentes. These thin blades of snow lean perfectly in unison, pointing directly toward the path of the sun, looking for all the world like a quiet, frozen forest worshipping the light. It is a beautiful, calming reminder of how yielding gently to warmth can create shapes of breathtaking, ordered elegance out of an endless white plain. As this intricately sculpted sea of ice shifts infinitesimally down the mountain, it acts as the most patient and powerful traveller on Earth. Glaciers are uniquely capable of carrying burdens that no other force in nature could move so peacefully. Trapped within the slow-moving rivers of ice are colossal boulders, sometimes the size of entire houses plucked gently from the high, jagged peaks. The ice embraces these massive stones and carries them downward over hundreds of miles, a quiet journey that can easily take tens of thousands of years. Eventually, when the climate warms and the ice softly, gradually recedes, it lays these boulders down upon entirely foreign landscapes. These solitary giants, left resting in the middle of smooth, grassy plains or perched precariously on delicate, unlikely ledges, are known as glacial erratics. They are geological strangers, stones born in a distant, harsh mountain range, quietly dreaming in a new, gentle world. Often, they become covered in soft, spreading circles of orange and green lichen, adapting beautifully to their new home. Seeing one of these massive rocks resting peacefully in a gentle meadow is a profound reminder that even the heaviest burdens are eventually set down. You too can allow the heavy things you've been carrying today to finally come to rest. Nothing needs to be held too tightly anymore. Let the body grow slightly heavier as it sinks into the absolute comfort of this moment. Far beneath these resting stones, below the miles of thick, heavily compacted blue ice, exists an entirely different hidden world that defies the imagination. One might naturally assume that the absolute bottom of a glacier, where the cold is most profound and the sunlight has never reached, would be a place of solid, unyielding frost. Yet, the sheer weight of the ice above creates an astonishing physical paradox. The immense pressure from millions of tons of frozen water actually lowers the freezing point of the ice at the very bottom. Combined with the faint, persistent geothermal warmth radiating softly from the core of the Earth itself, this pressure gently melts the deepest ice, creating vast, dark lakes of pure liquid water, perfectly sealed beneath the glacier. Some of these subglacial lakes, like the magnificent Lake Vostok hidden beneath Antarctica, are the size of inland seas. They exist in absolute darkness and perfect isolation, undisturbed for millions upon millions of years. The water within them is completely untouched by the wind, the rain, or the shifting seasons of the surface world. They are the most pristine, silent bodies of water on the planet, holding secrets of a time before recorded history. It is a deeply comforting, grounding thought to know that even beneath the heaviest, coldest pressures of life, there is a place that remains fluid, deep, and perfectly calm. This hidden, liquid water does not merely sit in dark isolation. It serves a vital, soothing purpose for the entire glacial structure above it. The microscopic layers of water act as a gentle, continuous lubricant between the colossal weight of the ice and the rigid bedrock below. This creates a fascinating geological phenomenon known as basal sliding. Instead of grinding harshly and destructively against the stone, the entire glacier is allowed to float ever so slightly on a microscopic film of water. This soft cushion allows the mountain of ice to glide smoothly, quietly, and continuously down the valley. It is a perfectly harmonious relationship between the solid and the liquid, where a fraction of an inch of water can gently support and guide millions of tons of ice. Sometimes this water softly trickles through hidden, winding subglacial channels, creating the muffled, echoing sound of a distant hidden river. Eventually it emerges at the snout of the glacier as a clear, pure, freezing stream, nourishing the pine forests and wildflower meadows far below. It reveals that true progress, even for something as massive and formidable as a glacier, is not achieved through rigid, unyielding force, but through a softening, a yielding, a gentle lubrication that allows everything to move peacefully in its own natural time. Following these pure, frigid streams downward through the winding valleys, we eventually reach the edge of the world, where the great slow river of ice finally meets the endless expanse of the ocean. These magnificent structures are known as tidewater glaciers. When the ice reaches the sea, it does not simply stop or immediately dissolve. Instead, it pushes bravely outward, its massive fractured blue face standing tall against the gently rolling saltwater waves. As the buoyant ocean lifts the edge of the ice, small, gentle pieces quietly detach and fall into the water below, a process beautifully and simply known as calving. But not all of this happens with a massive thunderous roar. More often than not, it is a quiet, continuous shedding of small, sparkling fragments that gather thickly on the surface of the sea, creating a floating, mesmerizing mosaic called brash ice. This shattered, drifting ice dampens the natural motion of the ocean, creating a remarkably calm, protected, glassy harbour right at the base of the glacier. In this quiet, slushy, peaceful water, harbour seals find soft, temporary beds to rest upon, and seabirds float peacefully among the bobbing crystals. The end of the glacier's impossibly long journey is not a sudden disappearance, but a gentle breaking apart, a beautiful softening that provides rest, quiet, and shelter for life at the edge of the sea. As your own breath settles deeper and slower into the chest, you can allow your racing thoughts to fragment and drift, becoming like a quiet sea of brash ice, gentle, unhurried, and perfectly resting. Among these drifting, shimmering fragments, much larger pieces occasionally float free, quietly becoming solitary wanderers of the great ocean currents. We call them icebergs, and they are absolute masterpieces of hidden scale and quiet geometry. When we look at an iceberg drifting smoothly on the distant horizon, perhaps catching the warm, golden light of the setting sun, we're only witnessing a beautiful, tiny fraction of its true existence. Because the density of pure, ancient glacial ice is only slightly less than the density of the salty ocean water that supports it. A full 90% of the iceberg's immense mass is hidden perfectly beneath the dark, rolling waves. Below the surface lies an inverted, silent mountain, a submerged, glowing cathedral of smooth, beautifully sculpted blue ice, extending hundreds of feet into the quiet deep. This immense, hidden weight is what gives the iceberg its incredible, unshakable stability, allowing it to glide with slow, majestic dignity, regardless of the chaotic surface winds or the crashing waves above. It serves as a profoundly calming metaphor for the unexplored depths of the human mind. So much of our inner strength, our deepest memory, and our quiet, sustaining power exist far below the surface, unseen but deeply felt, anchoring us softly and safely in the moving currents of life. In the freezing, perfectly tranquil waters immediately surrounding these drifting mountains of ice, the ocean itself begins to mimic the glacier in a very subtle, mesmerizing way. When the winter air temperature drops significantly below freezing, but the ocean water manages to remain liquid due to its heavy salt content, a magical, quiet transformation occurs at the very surface of the sea. Minuscule, needle-like crystals of ice, utterly transparent and incredibly delicate, begin to rapidly form and suspend themselves in the top layer of the water. This delicate suspension is known as frazzle ice. As these millions of tiny, floating needles gather and weave together, they change the very texture and behavior of the ocean. The surface of the water completely loses its sharp, dancing ripples and becomes thick, smooth, and heavy, taking on the matte, dark, flawless appearance of spilled oil or cooling wax. This fascinating stage is poetically called grease ice. It possesses the miraculous, almost magical ability to absorb the kinetic energy of the wind and waves, silencing the ocean completely. The sea transforms into a dark, glassy mirror, perfectly still, heavy, and deeply quiet. To look out over a vast field of grease ice is to witness the ocean taking a deep, heavy, calming breath. pausing all its chaotic, endless motion to embrace absolute undisturbed stillness. As we shift our perspective away from the quieted ocean and back to the land, tracing the rocky, uneven edges where the ice meets the earth, we uncover a profound quietness perfectly preserved in time. Glaciers are not merely architects that carve the landscape, they are unparalleled, meticulous guardians of the Earth's history. In deep mountain valleys where glaciers have gently and slowly retreated over the last century, a magnificent and incredibly eerie discovery is often made. Standing quietly in the newly exposed damp earth are the perfectly preserved upright stumps of ancient forests. Thousands of years ago, as the global climate shifted into a long, deep winter, the slowly advancing ice did not simply crush or obliterate these trees. Instead, outwashed plains of fine, silty sand and freezing water gently buried the trunks, sealing them away in a frozen, airless, protective vault, long before the main body of the glacier glided softly over them. Because they were entirely shielded from the oxygen and the elements, the wood did not decay. These ghost forests, sometimes many thousands of years old, stand completely intact, their bark still deeply textured, their roots still firmly gripping the ancient sleeping soil. They are silent sentinels, beautiful, indisputable proof that what is covered by the ice is not destroyed, but held safely in a state of suspended grace. You too can deeply trust that your core energies and clearest thoughts are entirely safe, resting quietly beneath the surface of sleep, perfectly ready to emerge when the season is right. Looking once more upon the glacier in its breathtaking entirety, spanning wide valleys and entire continents in an unbroken, softly glowing sheet of pure, radiant white, we can truly appreciate its most sweeping and protective role. The vast, uninterrupted expanse of the ice acts as the Earth's most vital mirror, a beautiful phenomenon known in the quiet circles of science as the albedo effect. Because the smooth surface of the glacier is so brilliantly, flawlessly bright, it acts as a gentle planetary shield for our world. When the powerful, intense rays of the sun travel millions of miles through the dark vacuum of space to strike the Earth, the pure white ice catches that light and effortlessly, silently reflects the vast majority of it back out into the cosmos. Instead of absorbing the heat and holding the warmth, the glacier deflects it softly away, silently regulating the temperature of our entire delicate home. It is a colossal, entirely passive system of planetary cooling, requiring no active energy, no loud movement, only the simple, profound act of existing in its pure, bright state. It teaches us a deeply relaxing truth, that sometimes the most profound way to protect, heal, and balance our world is not through constant action or immense effort, but simply by reflecting light, by letting things bounce away, and by maintaining a quiet, radiant, unbothered presence. As the quiet reflection of the starlight shimmers softly across these endless glowing white plains, the colours of the night sky begin to shift, weaving ribbons of emerald and violet in the high atmosphere, promising new, breathtaking wonders to be found exactly where the ancient ice meets the endless celestial spheres. These celestial ribbons, the auroras, do not merely dance in the empty sky above, they reach down to physically touch the frozen Earth. When the charged, invisible particles of solar winds meet the magnetic embrace of our planet, they ignite into sweeping, silent arcs of emerald green, magenta, and soft violet in the high atmosphere. But the glacier below does not passively ignore this magnificent light. Because the vast ice sheets of the polar regions are composed of billions of intricately aligned, pure ice crystals, the entire landscape acts as a curved, frosted mirror. The textured surface catches the ethereal, shifting glow of the aurora and diffuses it across thousands of square miles of snow. The ground itself appears to become illuminated from within, glowing with a soft, pulsing luminescence that perfectly mirrors the silent, slow-motion rhythm of the solar storms above. It is a stunning collaboration between the deep, energetic mechanics of the cosmos and the still, waiting canvas of the frozen world. Witnessing the ice bathe softly in this otherworldly light reminds us that even the most grounded, heavy things can become beautiful vessels for celestial light, quietly reflecting the gentle energy of distant stars. This delicate interplay of light and surface geometry takes on another, almost magical form during the crisp, still days of late spring. When the strong midday sun gently melts the very top millimetre of the snowpack, and a sudden, sharp, cold front descends rapidly in the late afternoon, an exquisite phenomenon known as Fernspiegel, or a fern mirror, is gently born. The microscopic layer of water refreezes instantly into an impossibly thin, perfectly smooth, transparent glaze of pure, solid ice, stretching tightly over the granular snow beneath. If you were to walk alongside a glacier covered in a fern mirror, the physical ground itself would seem to vanish entirely, replaced by a perfect, unbroken reflection of the sky above. The drifting clouds, the soft gradients of dusk, and the deep blue of the atmosphere are painted perfectly beneath your feet. It creates an enchanting, dizzying sensation of walking suspended softly in the clouds, caught quietly between two identical, limitless skies. It is a moment where the Earth completely loses its visual weight, suggesting that sometimes, when conditions are just right, the boundaries between the heavy ground and the boundless sky can gracefully dissolve. As you rest in the quiet of this space, you too can let the boundaries of the day dissolve. Allow your breathing to slow, feeling the chest rise and fall like a gentle, slow-motion wave, knowing there is nowhere else you need to be. When the mountain wind sweeps down from the high peaks and races across these expansive, mirror-like plains, it acts as an invisible, tireless, and infinitely patient sculptor. Over days and weeks of persistent directional blowing, the wind gently picks up fine, loose snow and carves the hardened surface below into complex wave-like ridges known as sastrugi. These are not haphazard, messy bumps. They're highly aerodynamic, beautifully streamlined dunes made of solid ice, resembling the gentle crests of a deep ocean frozen perfectly in time. Some sastrugi are no larger than a delicate feathered ripple on a pond, while others can grow waist-high, creating a vast, intricate topography of soft shadows and bright light that points unfailingly in the direction of the prevailing storm. To look out over a vast moonlit field of sastrugi is to see the physical, resting memory of the wind itself rendered in 3 breathtaking dimensions. The air, which is usually invisible and fleeting, leaves its permanent, beautiful signature upon the ice. It is a quiet testament to how even the unseen, passing forces in our lives slowly, softly shape the landscape of our minds, carving patterns of profound resilience and grace that endure long after the immediate storm has peacefully passed. Moving downward from these wind-sculpted plains, where the massive body of the glacier is forced to squeeze through narrow, steep mountain passes, the ice cascades over the hidden rock in a slow-motion waterfall known as an icefall. It is a chaotic, shattered tumble of colossal ice blocks. Yet, at the gentle base of these immense drops, the glacier always heals itself, knitting back together into a smooth, coherent flowing river. But the journey leaves a beautiful, permanent mark. As the ice reforms under its own immense weight, it creates spectacular sweeping arcs of alternating light and dark bands called ogives. These bands stretch in wide, graceful, symmetrical curves across the entire width of the glacier, arching downstream in perfect, quiet unison. The dark bands represent ice that travelled through the churning icefall during the warmer, dustier months of summer, while the bright, pure white bands represent the soft, snowy accumulation of winter. In essence, these alternating waves are the majestic, geographical tree rings of the glacier. Each pair of dark and light bands represents exactly 1 year of the glacier's long, patient life. Standing high on a valley wall and gazing down at a series of ogives is like reading the rhythmic visual diary of the mountain, a heartbeat measuring time not in fleeting seconds or hours, but in slow, majestic seasons. and this steady rhythmic heartbeat can sometimes be physically felt and heard in the deepest parts of the night. While the deep resonant hum of internal friction is a constant murmur, occasionally a glacier will produce a singular, profound sound that vibrates softly through the very bedrock of the valley. When the temperature of the air drops suddenly and sharply during the depths of the polar winter, the uppermost layers of the ice naturally contract in the chill. This sudden shrinking causes the ice to pull apart with a gentle release of tension, creating a deep, booming phenomenon known as a cryocism, or an icequake. Unlike earthquakes, which are born of harsh tectonic friction deep within the earth, icequakes are highly localized, non-destructive, and born entirely of the settling cold. The sound is magnificent, a low, resonant, heavy thud, like a colossal bass drum being struck once in the absolute darkness, echoing softly against the surrounding mountain walls before fading back into perfect, heavy silence. It is the sound of the ice settling deeply into the winter, adjusting its vast weight to the comforting chill. Just as the glacier shifts and settles to find its perfect resting state, you can allow your own muscles to completely relax. Let the shoulders drop gently away from the ears, let the jaw soften, and let the entire body sink a little deeper into the mattress. You're safe to simply exist, suspended in the quiet. Beneath this settling ice, deep within the heavy shadowed body of the glacier itself, seasonal meltwater works tirelessly to carve subterranean cathedrals of impossible beauty. While surface water trickles through tiny cracks in the summer, it eventually creates winding subglacial rivers that rush over the bedrock. But when the climate cools and water levels drop dramatically during the freezing winter months, these hidden channels are left completely empty, forming spectacular winding ice caves. To step inside one of these transient caverns is to enter a secluded world bathed entirely in an otherworldly glowing sapphire light. The walls are remarkably smooth and undulating, polished to a glass-like finish by the rushing water of summers past. Because the thick ice above absorbs all the harsh, warm colours of sunlight, the only light that filters down into the cave is a pure, luminous, tranquil blue. Tiny, delicate frost crystals coat the ceiling, catching the faint light like millions of softly suspended diamonds. These caves are beautifully ephemeral masterpieces. They shift, slowly close, and vanish entirely within a few seasons, only for new ones to be patiently carved elsewhere in the dark. It is a comforting realization that true beauty does not need to be permanent to be profoundly meaningful. It can simply exist in the present moment, a quiet sanctuary carved by water and light, waiting patiently in the dark. Even in this deep blue chill, where one might logically assume all biological life is impossible, the bright surface of the glacier plays host to a tiny miraculous resident. On relatively warm, sunlit winter days, the surface of the snowpack may suddenly appear to be lightly dusted with moving grains of black pepper. These are not specks of dirt, but incredibly resilient microanimals known as springtails, or more affectionately, snow fleas. They are not true fleas at all. They do not bite, and they are entirely harmless. They are microscopic, gentle creatures that possess a tiny tail-like appendage acting as an organic spring, allowing them to vault gracefully across the uneven snow. What makes them truly remarkable is their brilliant internal chemistry. Their tiny bodies naturally synthesize a complex protein that functions as a biological antifreeze, preventing dangerous ice crystals from forming within their delicate cells. They spend their quiet, microscopic lives grazing contentedly on invisible algae and wind-blown pollen, completely unfazed by the freezing temperatures that would paralyze most other forms of life. They are a delightful, tiny testament to the boundless adaptability of nature, proving that warmth is not a strict prerequisite for a vibrant, peaceful existence, and that life, no matter how remarkably small, will always find a way to dance softly upon the ice. Following the ice as it stretches toward the driest, coldest deserts on Earth, the remote wind-scoured dry valleys of Antarctica, we encounter a glacial feature that beautifully bridges the gap between deep Earth chemistry and ancient suspended history. At the terminus of the magnificent Taylor Glacier, there is a place where a striking deep orange liquid flows softly from a fissure in the stark white ice. For decades, it was a profound mystery, a brilliant visual anomaly standing out vividly against the monochromatic frozen landscape. We now know that this is not a product of recent surface meltwater, but the slow, deliberate release of a subterranean ocean that has been safely trapped beneath the ice for nearly 2 million years. This ancient subglacial lake is incredibly rich in dissolved iron and sulfur, and because it has been perfectly sealed off from the atmosphere and sunlight for eons, it is completely devoid of oxygen. When this hypersaline water finally breaches the surface and kisses the modern air for the first time, the iron instantly oxidizes, rusting gracefully as it flows, painting the pristine ice in rich, earthy tones of copper, amber, and deep ochre. It is a breathtaking, slow-motion chemical reaction, a place where a forgotten underground sea softly breathes its first breath of air in 2 million years. It reveals how the glacier acts as a gentle, unwavering guardian of deep time, holding whole hidden ecosystems in a state of suspended preservation until they are finally ready to be released back into the world. As the absolute edges of these immense continental ice sheets finally meet the frozen, dark ocean, creating vast expanses of solid sea ice, nature thoughtfully ensures that the water does not become a completely sealed, impenetrable vault. Dotted across the frozen expanse of the polar seas are polynyas, large, mysterious pools of open, dark water that stubbornly refuse to freeze over, even in the absolute biting depths of the winter chill. Some are kept open by warm, gentle upwelling ocean currents rising softly from the deep abyss, while others are maintained by fierce, unrelenting winds that constantly push the newly formed, fragile ice away from the coastline. In the vast white desert of the frozen ocean, a polynya acts as a vital, life-saving oasis. It is a quiet, breathing hole for the ocean itself. Beneath the dark, rippling surface of this open water, a magnificent, peaceful gathering of life takes place. Pods of narwhals, white beluga whales, and deep-diving seals navigate the dark, freezing waters for miles beneath the solid ice ceiling, relying entirely on the gentle, guiding light of the polynya to surface and draw a deep, vital breath of cold air. Flocks of seabirds gather quietly at the edges, resting in the rising, delicate steam of the relatively warm water. It is a beautiful reminder that even in the most frozen, seemingly closed-off periods of life, there are always natural spaces of warmth, openness, and connection waiting patiently to be found. Just as the animals find their quiet, safe harbour, you can allow your mind to rest securely in this open space of awareness, gently letting go of any tight, frozen loops of thought. Moving slightly inland from these fractured, frozen coasts onto the vast, flat plains of the Arctic tundra, the interaction between hidden ice and earth creates a deeply soothing, slow-motion alteration of the landscape itself. Over centuries, shallow pools of water slowly drain away, exposing the damp, heavy earth to the deep, penetrating cold of the air. The water hidden deep within the pores of the soil begins to freeze, and as it transforms into solid ice, it naturally, gradually expands. Over hundreds of years, this swelling subterranean ice core pushes the earth upward, creating a gentle, perfectly rounded hill known as a pingo. Some pingos are small, subtle mounds, while others can grow slowly and gracefully to the size of a large, commanding dome, rising majestically above the otherwise perfectly flat, unbroken horizon. They are hills with literal hearts of pure ice. In the short, vibrant Arctic summer, the earth covering the pingo bursts into brilliant soft life, blanketed in lush green grasses and delicate nodding wildflowers, perfectly concealing the ancient frozen core beneath. They stand like quiet, sleeping sentinels on the plains, formed not by violent tectonic collisions or fast erupting volcanoes, but by the slow, inexorable, silent expansion of freezing water in the dark. They are a profound meditation on the power of slow, patient growth, demonstrating how cold, quiet, unseen processes can eventually elevate the Earth, creating soft, beautiful high ground in a vast, level world. As these gentle, ice-hearted hills stand quietly beneath the circling ancient stars, a different kind of delicate magic begins to take hold in the atmosphere just above the frost, where the cold air itself begins to crystallize, preparing to scatter the light of the approaching morning sun in ways the Earth has never seen. This crystallization in the quiet, freezing air is a phenomenon of pure visual magic beautifully known as diamond dust. On days when the sky is flawlessly clear, completely devoid of clouds, and the temperature drops into a state of absolute biting stillness, the scarce moisture remaining in the air does not form into delicate snowflakes. Instead, it freezes directly out of the empty atmosphere, forming millions of microscopic, unattached ice crystals that float suspended in the breathable air. Because these tiny prisms are flawlessly geometric, when they catch the low, golden rays of the morning sun or the silver beams of a full moon, they ignite like a mist of crushed diamonds hanging softly in space. This suspended, sparkling dust creates magnificent optical illusions in the sky, forming glowing halos, sweeping arcs, and towering pillars of light that frame the sun in quiet majesty. It is a stunning revelation that even when the sky appears entirely empty and clear, it is actually filled with the invisible potential for breathtaking beauty, just waiting for the right light to reveal itself. As you picture this gently glittering air, you can allow your own thoughts to settle and slow. The mind can simply drift like these suspended crystals, effortlessly catching the quiet light of your own awareness, completely unburdened by the need to be anywhere else. Resting just beneath this floating dust, the physical surface of the snow undergoes its own delicate, silent transformation in the deep cold. If you were to look extremely closely at the very top layer of the glacier on a profoundly still winter morning, you would not see a smooth, flat sheet of ice. You would find an intricate, fragile forest of frost that seems to have grown out of the snow itself, a beautiful formation known as surface hoar. Through a slow process called sublimation, the moisture buried deep within the snowpack slowly migrates upward as a vapour. When this vapour touches the freezing surface air, it does not melt into water. It transitions instantly into solid ice, building magnificent feathery crystals that stand upright like fragile leaves of silver fern or transparent butterfly wings. These delicate structures can grow to be several inches tall, covering the entire expanse of the glacier in a microscopic glass-like meadow that shatters into soft powder at the slightest touch of the wind. It reminds us that growth and intricate beauty are always happening, even in the harshest, most frozen environments on Earth, quietly building delicate masterpieces in the dark when no one is watching. When the season softly shifts and the gentle warmth of the high alpine summer finally touches this delicate surface, the brilliant white of the glacier sometimes yields to a deeply unexpected, beautiful colour. In the sun-drenched, melting snowfields, vast patches of the ice can take on a soft, blushing hue, ranging from a pale, delicate rose to a vibrant, deep coral. This enchanting phenomenon is commonly known as watermelon snow. It is not a mineral stain, but a magnificent, thriving bloom of microscopic, cold-loving algae called Chlamydomonas nivalis. During the freezing winter, these tiny organisms sleep peacefully beneath the snow in deep hibernation. But when the summer light penetrates the ice and the meltwater begins to flow, they awaken, producing a bright red pigment that acts as a natural biological sunscreen, protecting their delicate cells from the intense ultraviolet light of the high altitude. Stranger still, if you were to walk across this blushing snow, it carries the faint, sweet scent of fresh watermelon. It is a brilliant, colourful testament to the resilience of life, a beautiful secret hidden within the white expanse, proving that a warm, vibrant energy can flourish perfectly in the centre of the cold. As this summer warmth continues to coax liquid water from the surface of the blushing snow, it sets in motion a spectacular feat of internal architecture. The trickling meltwater gathers into small crystalline pools, which eventually find tiny cracks in the massive body of the ice. As the water flows downward, it swirls and carves, eventually boring perfectly smooth, vertical cylindrical shafts deep into the heart of the glacier, creating magnificent formations known as moulins. These plunging liquid hourglasses can drop for hundreds of feet through the solid blue ice, spiralling downward like the smooth interior of a massive frozen seashell. The water rushing through these sapphire shafts creates a deep, hollow, rushing sound, a soothing aquatic bass line that resonates through the entire structure of the glacier. They act as the vital internal plumbing of the ice, relieving the pressure of the surface and allowing the heavy water to find its way peacefully to the bedrock below. You can imagine any remaining tension in your own body mimicking this water. Allow the tightness in your shoulders and the gripping in your mind to simply wash away, swirling softly down and releasing completely, leaving you feeling entirely clear, deeply empty, and perfectly at ease. When this released water finally reaches the ancient bedrock hidden miles beneath the surface, it joins the slow, grinding weight of the glacier to act as the ultimate sculptor of the Earth itself. The way a glacier carves the world is fundamentally different and infinitely softer than the way a rushing river cuts through stone. A fast-moving river forcefully slices downward into the earth, carving sharp, steep, jagged valleys in the shape of a harsh letter phi. But a glacier, with its slow, enveloping, immense weight, does not cut. It softly cradles and deeply rounds. As the thick ice flows over the land over hundreds of thousands of years, it scours away the sharp edges of the mountains, hollowing out massive, sweeping, parabolic curves known as U-shaped valleys. When the climate warms and the ice eventually quietly retreats, it leaves behind these monumental cradles of smooth stone, vast and open, with steep polished walls and wide, flat floors, much like the breathtaking valleys of Yosemite. They are geological monuments to the power of slow, gentle persistence, revealing that true, lasting change in the landscape of our world, and perhaps in ourselves, is not achieved through sharp, forceful cutting, but through a patient, sweeping, deeply comforting embrace that simply wears away the sharpest edges over time. Within these massive, sweeping stone cradles, distinct rivers of ice often meet and join together in a remarkably elegant display of unity. When two separate glaciers flow down from different mountain peaks and merge into a single massive valley, they do not violently crash or disrupt one another. They gently flow side by side, perfectly matching each other's slow, majestic pace. As they join, the rocks and debris that were being carried along the outer edges of each separate glacier are suddenly brought together in the very centre of the newly combined ice flow. This creates a striking, continuous ribbon of dark stone running straight down the middle of the bright white glacier, a beautiful feature known as a medial moraine. From high above, these moraines look like perfectly painted racing stripes, elegant lines of shadow gracefully tracing the contours of the flowing ice. If a glacier is joined by multiple tributaries, it can carry 5 or 6 of these perfect parallel dark lines, carrying the specific geological history of each separate mountain perfectly in sync. It is a profoundly peaceful visual of paths converging, showing how different journeys, carrying different histories, can come together seamlessly, walking side by side to form something even more magnificent and deeply unified. As this vast, striped river of ice descends from the high peaks, it alters the very nature of the atmosphere directly above it, creating its own invisible, sweeping breath. Because the massive expanse of the glacier is so profoundly cold, it constantly chills the layer of air that rests immediately upon its surface. In the language of physics, cold air is dense and heavy. Instead of rising, this deeply chilled air clings to the surface of the ice, and, guided purely by the gentle, unrelenting pull of gravity, begins to roll down the slope of the glacier like a slow, invisible waterfall. This creates a constant descending breeze known as a katabatic wind. It is a wind born not of distant chaotic storm systems or shifting atmospheric pressures, but born entirely of the mountain's own stillness and deep cold. At the top of the glacier, it is merely a gentle, cool sigh, but as it gathers weight and rolls down the long miles of ice, it can become a steady, sweeping current that clears the valley of fog and clouds. It is the literal breath of the ice, a reminder that the environment you cultivate within yourself has the power to naturally clear the air around you, creating a climate of your own making, rooted entirely in your own quiet center. This heavy, steady breath eventually sweeps the immense body of the glacier all the way to the very edge of the continent, where it meets the vast, dark expanse of the polar ocean. But in the coldest regions of the world, such as the remote coasts of Antarctica, the ice does not immediately break apart upon touching the sea. Instead, fueled by its own immense forward momentum, the glacier simply glides off the bedrock and pushes out over the deep ocean water, remaining perfectly intact. It creates a colossal floating platform of fresh water known as an ice shelf. The scale of these floating structures is almost beyond human comprehension. The Ross Ice Shelf, for instance, is a perfectly flat, brilliantly white floating expanse of ice, roughly the size of the entire country of France. Its edges form towering, sheer cliffs of ice that drop straight into the dark sea, standing hundreds of feet tall. To stand upon an ice shelf is to stand upon a temporary floating continent, suspended safely between the sky and the abyss. It is a landscape of absolute, unshakable support, a profound demonstration of buoyancy, where millions of tons of heavy ancient ice are held effortlessly and peacefully by the yielding strength of the deep ocean. Because this massive frozen continent is floating freely upon the water, it is intimately, physically connected to the deep cosmic rhythms of the ocean beneath it. Though it appears to be a rigid, immovable mass of solid stone, the entire ice shelf is gently lifted and lowered twice a day by the passing tides. This slow, majestic movement is known as tidal flexing. As the distant moon orbits the Earth, silently pulling the oceans into sweeping, rolling bulges of water, the sea rises, and the continent of ice rises with it. It is an incredibly slow, totally imperceptible motion, but a deeply profound one. Millions of square miles of heavy ice quietly lifting a few feet into the air, then softly, gradually settling back down in perfect rhythm with the celestial mechanics of the solar system. The ice does not resist the ocean, it breathes with it. As the ice rises and falls with the distant pulling memory of the moon, you too can allow the gentle rhythm of your own breathing to anchor you. Notice the slow rise of the chest and the soft, heavy fall. You are part of this quiet, rhythmic breathing, yielding gracefully to the peaceful tide of sleep, safe and deeply connected to the slow motion of the night. Far beneath this gently breathing shelf, deep in the dark waters where the floating ice meets the freezing sea, a slow and hidden alchemy takes place. While the top of the ice shelf is built from thousands of years of pure falling snow, the very bottom of the shelf grows from the ocean itself. In a remarkably quiet process, supercooled seawater slowly freezes to the underside of the glacier. As it turns to ice, it captures the microscopic organic life of the ocean, tiny, dormant phytoplankton and deep-sea minerals. When this marine ice is eventually exposed to the light, perhaps when a massive iceberg slowly carves and flips entirely over in the open sea, it does not appear white or sapphire blue. Because of the frozen organic matter perfectly trapped within its crystalline structure, the ice glows with a deep, translucent, breathtaking emerald green. These jade icebergs are among the most rare and mesmerizing sights on the open ocean. Dark, glowing jewels drifting silently through the grey waves. They are a beautiful testament to the hidden transformations that happen entirely out of sight, deep in the dark, where the pure ice of the sky finally meets the deep memory of the sea, carrying perfectly preserved life outward into the boundless, open currents of the waiting ocean. When one of these massive floating monuments of jade or sapphire ice eventually finds its way into the warmer moving currents of the open sea, it embarks on a slow, continuous transformation. Beneath the surface of the water, where the ocean gently embraces the submerged ice, the steady, rhythmic wash of the waves acts as a master sculptor. The salt water softly melts the underwater portion of the iceberg, carving it into perfectly smooth, overlapping bowls and gentle, undulating depressions. This mesmerizing, dimpled texture is known as scalloping. It resembles the intricate, overlapping scales of a silver fish, or the carefully hammered surface of a large, beautiful singing bowl. As the underwater mass slowly melts and changes shape, the center of gravity of the entire iceberg shifts. With a slow, majestic, and completely silent grace, the colossal mountain of ice will occasionally roll entirely over in the open water. As it settles comfortably into its new balance, it raises its hidden, underwater architecture into the sunlight for the very first time. The newly exposed ice is astonishingly smooth, perfectly rounded, and polished to a flawless, glassy shine by the sea. It is a stunning reveal of a hidden masterpiece, reminding us that even the most deeply submerged, unseen parts of ourselves are constantly being shaped and smoothed by the currents of our lives, eventually surfacing as something beautifully refined and perfectly balanced. While these rolling, sculptured icebergs are born from the jagged, deeply crevassed valleys of mountain glaciers, the immense floating ice shelves we visited earlier give birth to a completely different kind of wandering island. When the very edge of a vast flat ice shelf eventually fractures and drifts out to sea, it creates a tabular iceberg. These are absolute marvels of horizontal geometry, starkly different from the pointed, mountain-like peaks we naturally imagine. A tabular iceberg is flawlessly flat on top, resembling an endless floating plateau of pure white snow. Their sheer vertical sides drop at an exact 90-degree angle down into the dark, rolling waves, revealing distinct horizontal bands of deep blue and brilliant white that tell the quiet story of thousands of years of gentle snowfall. The sheer scale of these floating tables is staggering. Some tabular icebergs are so unimaginably vast that they possess their own localized weather systems, stretching for dozens of miles across the horizon. To look upon one is to see a piece of the infinite flat expanse of the polar plateau detached and gently sailing away. It is an image of profound, unshakable stability, moving peacefully through a chaotic sea. As you visualize this immense flat surface resting comfortably on the water, you can allow your own mind to smooth out, letting any turbulent, uneven thoughts flatten and calm, mirroring the perfect resting horizon of the ice. Returning from the open ocean to the heart of the great frozen continents, where the ice sheets stretch out in every direction like a motionless white sea, we can sometimes spot a lone, striking interruption in the endless snow. Rising bravely out of the flat expanse of the continental glacier is a single, sharp peak of dark, exposed rock. These solitary mountain summits, completely surrounded by thousands of feet of glacial ice, are known beautifully as nunataks. They are the absolute tips of massive ancient mountain ranges that have been entirely buried by the slow accumulation of winter snows over millions of years. Only the very highest, most resilient spires manage to pierce the surface of the ice sheet, standing like quiet, rocky lighthouses in an ocean of white. Because they are the only exposed land for hundreds of miles, nunataks become incredibly vital sanctuaries. High above the moving ice, delicate alpine lichens cling softly to the sun-warmed stone, and migratory seabirds find a safe, isolated haven to rest their wings and build their nests. They are islands of life and colour in a monochrome world. A nunatak is a comforting, profound symbol of endurance. It shows us that no matter how heavily the world may blanket us, no matter how deep the winters of our lives may become, our core, our strongest, highest peaks, will always remain unburied, standing strong and reaching softly for the light. In the deep, shadowed valleys directly surrounding these solitary rocky peaks, the wind often behaves in strange and extraordinary ways. As fierce, persistent winds race down from the high polar plateau and strike the unyielding stone of the nunatak, the air is forced to swirl and accelerate. Over countless centuries, this endless, sweeping wind acts like a colossal, invisible brush. It continuously scours away every single flake of newly fallen snow, preventing it from ever accumulating. Eventually, the wind sweeps away the white surface entirely, exposing the incredibly old, incredibly dense, sapphire blue glacial ice that usually rests hidden thousands of feet below. These exposed regions are simply and beautifully called blue ice areas, but their true magic lies in what they collect. As the deep glacier slowly flows toward the nunatak and the surface snow is constantly swept away, the ice acts as a slow-moving upward conveyor belt. Anything that fell onto the ice sheet millions of years ago is eventually carried to the surface of the blue ice. Because of this, these smooth blue fields are the single greatest resting place on Earth for ancient meteorites. Dark, quiet stones from the very birth of the solar system, having travelled millions of miles through the silence of space, fall into the soft snow, journey for millennia through the dark heart of the glacier, and are finally gently laid out on a polished blue pedestal, waiting in the absolute stillness to be found. Just as the deep ice slowly and peacefully surrenders its hidden treasures to the surface, you can allow your body to surrender its final, hidden pockets of tension. Feel the heavy, comfortable weight of your legs sinking into the mattress. Notice how the muscles of your back and neck are simply allowed to let go. There is no effort needed here. The breath flows in and out entirely on its own, a natural sweeping rhythm that clears the mind, leaving behind a smooth, calm expanse of resting awareness. While some glaciers reveal the deep blue of their ancient core to the sky, others choose to hide themselves completely from the world, donning a heavy protective cloak. In high dry mountain ranges where the air is arid and the rock is brittle, a fascinating variation of the frozen river exists. It is called a rock glacier. To the casual observer standing in a high alpine valley, a rock glacier simply looks like a massive stationary pile of shattered stones, gravel and boulders filling the basin. There is no gleaming white snow, no deep blue crevasses, no visible ice at all. But hidden entirely beneath this thick, heavy blanket of earth is a fully formed, continuously flowing core of solid ice. The rock and debris that tumble down from the surrounding peaks completely cover the glacier, insulating it perfectly from the warmth of the summer sun. This dark, heavy blanket of stone acts as a natural protective armour, allowing the ice beneath to survive and flow in climates that would otherwise melt a traditional glacier away. The rock glacier moves with the same impossibly slow, deliberate grace as a pure ice glacier, flowing smoothly down the mountain valley, carrying its heavy, rocky armour with it. It is a beautiful lesson in adaptation and preservation. It tells us that sometimes, in order to protect our core, our softest and most vital energies, it is perfectly okay to wrap ourselves in a heavy grounding layer, moving safely through the world while remaining entirely insulated and intact within. This slow, grinding movement of rock and ice, whether exposed to the sky or hidden beneath a blanket of stones, produces the finest, most delicate powder in the natural world. We have seen how this glacial flower turns alpine lakes into breathtaking pools of turquoise and emerald. But the journey of this microscopic stone does not end in the high mountains. Rivers carry this fine, suspended silt out of the valleys, across vast plains, and eventually pour it gracefully into the open ocean. When this mineral-rich, glacial dust finally meets the sea, it performs a quiet, astonishing miracle. The pulverized stone of the mountains is incredibly rich in iron, a vital nutrient that is often scarce in the deep ocean. When the glacier's heavy dust touches the salt water, it acts as a massive natural fertilizer. It sparks an immediate, vibrant explosion of microscopic life. Colossal blooms of phytoplankton, so immense they can easily be seen swirling in brilliant neon green patterns from satellites in space, flourish at the mouths of glacial rivers. These tiny, blooming plants form the absolute foundation of the entire ocean food web, breathing oxygen into the atmosphere and feeding everything from the smallest krill to the greatest whales. The slow, silent grinding of cold ice against hard stone ultimately brings vibrant, teeming life to the boundless sea, connecting the highest, frozen peaks directly to the breathing heartbeat of the ocean. When we look back up at those high valleys, long after the heavy grinding ice has completed its work and gently retreated, we're often left with a landscape that feels intentionally, artistically designed. As a glacier carves its way down a stepped mountain valley, it does not scour the earth evenly. It digs deeply into the softer rock, creating wide resting bowls, while leaving the harder, more resilient rock ridges intact. When the ice melts away, these carved, descending bowls fill with the pure, clear water of the melting snows. This leaves behind a breathtaking chain of perfectly circular, still mountain lakes, resting on different elevations like steps on a grand natural staircase. These linked pools are known as paternoster lakes. They are connected by a single, delicate, winding stream of water that gently cascades from one quiet pool down into the next. From above, they look exactly like a beautiful string of beads or pearls draped softly over the shoulders of the mountain. Each lake holds its own unique depth of blue, its own perfectly still reflection of the sky, yet they all share the exact same flowing water, passing it gently from one resting place to the next. The journey of the water through these linked quiet basins is unhurried and peaceful, a beautiful reminder that our own journey does not need to be a straight rushing line. We can rest deeply in one quiet phase, absorbing the light, before gently overflowing and moving on to the next. While the lakes rest in the open sun, deep inside the remaining glaciers, the ice itself seems to mimic the rhythm of life. The massive, winding ice caves carved by subglacial rivers do more than just filter the light into shades of glowing sapphire. They also breathe. Because a deep ice cave has multiple openings, perhaps a large entrance at the snout of the glacier, and smaller hidden fissures leading up to the surface of the ice, it creates its own internal circulating atmosphere. In the cold, quiet depths of winter, the air inside the deep cave is actually warmer and lighter than the freezing heavy air outside. This warm air naturally rises and gently exhales out through the top of the glacier, drawing fresh, crisp air in through the main entrance. When summer arrives and the outside air grows warm, the process gracefully reverses. The heavy, chilled air inside the cave flows smoothly out of the bottom entrance, pouring a cool, refreshing breeze down into the valley, while drawing warm air in from above. If you were to stand at the mouth of one of these magnificent, glowing blue caverns, you would feel a constant, gentle, rhythmic wind sweeping past you. It is the undeniable sensation of the mountain inhaling and exhaling, a slow, deep, geological respiration. It is a profound comfort to realize that even the mountains are breathing with you. As the earth takes its slow, cool breath, you can let your own breath match its deep, unhurried pace. Surrounding these breathing caves, on the vast expanses of the tundra, where the ground remains permanently frozen beneath the surface, the cold continues its quiet, meticulous artistry. In these high polar deserts, the earth is subjected to a constant rhythmic cycle of freezing and thawing, year after year, century after century. As the water within the soil freezes, it expands, naturally pushing the earth outward. When it thaws, the earth settles back. This endless, gentle pulsing of the ground acts as a remarkably patient sorting mechanism. It slowly, deliberately pushes larger stones and coarse gravel to the outside, while keeping the fine, soft soil perfectly in the centre. Over thousands of years, this invisible, rhythmic sorting creates a vast, breathtaking phenomenon known as patterned ground. The landscape naturally organises itself into perfect geometric shapes. Looking across the tundra, you will see endless miles of perfectly formed stone circles, sweeping polygons, and intricate connected honeycombs, all created entirely without the touch of a human hand. The stones are arranged so flawlessly that it looks as though an ancient, meticulous gardener spent a lifetime placing each pebble with exact precision. It is a stunning visual representation of the order that exists naturally within the universe. It reminds us that even within the seemingly random, shifting cycles of cold and warmth, there is a profound, beautiful order gently taking shape over time, arranging everything exactly where it belongs. And just as the earth arranges its stones, the deep ice arranges and preserves the invisible memories of the air. When glaciologists extract long, cylindrical cores of ancient ice from the very centre of the oldest glaciers, they are not simply pulling up frozen water, they are retrieving a perfectly intact, beautifully ordered timeline of the Earth's atmosphere. Trapped within the microscopic layers of these ice cores, safely suspended beside the tiny bubbles of ancient air, are things far more delicate than dust or stone. Held perfectly in the crystalline matrix are individual microscopic grains of ancient pollen. These tiny, intricate spheres of biological memory drifted on the wind tens of thousands of years ago, blown from forests and flowering plains that have long since vanished from the face of the earth. By carefully melting and examining these delicate grains, scientists can reconstruct entire lost landscapes. The ice remembers the deep green pine forests that once stood where now there is only barren rock. It remembers the bloom of ancient delicate ferns and the exact species of grasses that swayed in prehistoric winds. It is deeply moving to know that the heavy, cold, unyielding ice is actually the most gentle, perfect archivist of soft, fragile, blooming life. It holds the memory of every flower that ever entrusted its pollen to the wind, keeping it safe in the silent dark, proving that the beauty of the past is never truly lost. It is simply held, quietly waiting for the light to return. That gentle preservation of the past, held so carefully within the crystalline matrix of the ice, extends far beyond the microscopic world of pollen. In the high, thin air of the world's most remote mountain passes, where the glaciers have remained unmoved for millennia, the ice serves as a silent, frozen vault for human history. As the sun's warmth gently touches the edges of these high-altitude glaciers, it occasionally reveals artifacts that seem as though they were placed there only yesterday. Perfectly preserved leather shoes, delicately woven wool garments, and wooden hunting tools emerge from the melting ice, their fibres still intact, their colours barely faded by the passage of thousands of years. Because the glacier provides an environment of absolute darkness, zero oxygen, and constant freezing temperatures, it halts the very process of decay. These objects are not fossils, they are actual physical remnants of a day long ago, held in a state of suspended grace. It is a profound realization that the ice is not just a destroyer of paths, but a meticulous guardian of human stories, keeping them safe and sheltered from the eroding winds of time until we are ready to remember them once more. As these ancient artifacts emerge into the light, they are often accompanied by a transformation of the landscape that is equally striking and serene. When a glacier resides in a high mountain cirque, a wide amphitheatre-like basin carved into the side of a peak, it eventually leaves behind a landscape of singular, mirrored beauty. As the ice slowly recedes, the basin it carved fills with the purest meltwater imaginable, creating a high-altitude lake known as a tarn. These lakes are the jewels of the high country, often perfectly circular and cradled by steep protective granite walls. Because they are fed by the slow, steady melting of the remaining ice above, the water is exceptionally cold and incredibly still. On a quiet morning, a tarn becomes a flawless dark mirror, capturing the jagged peaks and the passing clouds with such absolute clarity that it is difficult to tell where the stone ends and the water begins. The silence surrounding a tarn is heavy and holy, a place where the earth seems to be holding its breath. Resting by the edge of such a lake, the mind can finally let go of its own turbulent waves, settling into a deep, reflective stillness that matches the sapphire depths of the water. This stillness of the high mountains is born from a geological process that is as rhythmic as the seasons. Below the surface of the moving ice, where the glacier meets the hard bedrock, a subtle and fascinating phenomenon known as regelation takes place. When the massive weight of the glacier encounters a bump or an obstacle in the rock, the intense pressure causes the ice at the base to melt slightly, even if the temperature is well below freezing. This thin film of water allows the glacier to flow smoothly over the obstacle, but as soon as the pressure is released on the other side, the water instantly refreezes. This continuous microscopic cycle of melting and freezing acts like a slow, rhythmic pulse at the very heart of the mountain. It is a beautiful mechanical harmony, a constant giving and taking that allows the immense mass to navigate a hard, unyielding world without breaking. It reminds us that flexibility is often found in the most unlikely places, and that by yielding slightly to pressure, we can move gracefully over the obstacles in our own paths. Your body understands this rhythm of release. With every exhale, the muscles soften, the tension melts away, and you glide a little deeper into the comfort of your bed. That same sense of graceful navigation can be seen on a much grander scale, where the glacier finally leaves the mountain and spills out onto the wide open coastal plains. When a fast-moving valley glacier is no longer confined by steep rock walls, it spreads out in all directions, creating a magnificent symmetrical shape known as a Piedmont glacier. From high above, it looks exactly like a colossal frozen silk fan or a wide white blossom opening toward the sea. The Malaspina Glacier in Alaska is the most famous example of this, a vast lobe of ice that covers thousands of square miles of level ground. Because the ice is no longer rushing down a narrow gorge, it slows down significantly, allowing its surface to become a complex tapestry of gentle ripples, winding meltwater streams, and deep blue pools. It is a landscape of transition, where the focused energy of the mountain becomes a broad, peaceful expanse of quiet power. It reveals that there is a different kind of strength found in spreading out, in slowing down, and in allowing ourselves to take up space in the quiet, level areas of our lives. As this vast, frozen fan rests upon the earth, it creates a unique environment for the air itself, leading to a phenomenon of ethereal, floating beauty. In the early hours of the morning, when the sun first touches the cold surface of the Piedmont Glacier, the temperature difference between the ice and the air creates a layer of incredibly dense, low-lying fog known as ice blink. This is not a thick grey mist that obscures the world, but a luminous, radiant white glow that seems to emanate from the ground itself. The fog catches the sunlight and scatters it so perfectly that the horizon disappears, leaving you standing in a world of pure, shadowless light. For early explorers, this ice blink was a guiding light, a glowing signal on the horizon that told them a great glacier or ice sheet lay ahead, long before they could see the ice itself. It is a soft visual whisper of the glacier's presence, a reminder that even when we cannot see the path clearly, there is often a gentle glow to guide us, a quiet assurance that we are exactly where we need to be. The breath settles now, moving in and out with the same soft, luminous ease as that morning mist, filling you with a sense of light and space. Deep within that luminous atmosphere, the glacier is constantly engaged in a process of internal cleansing that is as meticulous as it is slow. While the ice carries massive boulders and fine dust, it also possesses a remarkable ability to filter out impurities on a molecular level. As snowflakes are pressed into solid ice over centuries, the crystalline structure of the water naturally rejects anything that does not fit into its perfect hexagonal lattice. This process, known as zone refining, gradually pushes salts, minerals, and even certain chemical impurities toward the edges of the crystals or into the tiny veins of liquid water that run between them. The result is that the ice at the centre of an ancient glacier is some of the purest water on the planet, far cleaner than the snow that originally formed it. It is as if the glacier, through the sheer passage of time and the application of pressure, is constantly refining its own essence, seeking a state of absolute clarity. It is a comforting thought that time and experience do not just add layers to who we are, they can also act as a refining force, slowly washing away the unnecessary and leaving us with something clear, pure, and incredibly strong. This quest for purity and balance is reflected in the way the glacier interacts with the very stone beneath it, creating landforms that are remarkably smooth and tactile. As the ice flows over a particularly hard, resistant knob of bedrock, it does not crush it. Instead, it polishes the upstream side to a glass-like finish while plucking away fragments from the downstream side, creating a shape known as a roche moutonnée, or sheep back. From a distance, these smoothed rock mounds look like a flock of stone sheep resting peacefully in a meadow of alpine grass. They are soft to the touch, their surfaces often marked by long parallel grooves called striations, which are the delicate signatures of the stones the glacier carried long ago. These rocks are geological memories of a long, heavy embrace. They remind us that the most difficult, high-pressure periods of our lives can leave us with a surface that is not just resilient, but beautifully polished and uniquely textured. You can feel that same sense of smoothed, heavy peace in your own limbs now, as they rest motionless against the soft fabric of your sheets, as still and grounded as those ancient stone sheep. While the glacier polishes the stone below, it also leaves its mark on the vast plains far ahead of its path, creating a landscape of rolling, rhythmic hills that feel like a frozen sea. When a glacier retreats, it often leaves behind large, elongated mounds of till, a mixture of clay, sand, and gravel, that have been shaped by the moving ice into the form of an inverted spoon or a buried egg. These are called drumlins, and they often occur in vast groups known as swarms, or basket of eggs, topography. Every drumlin in a swarm points in exactly the same direction, showing the path the ice took as it moved across the world. They give the landscape a gentle, undulating rhythm, like the low, steady swell of the ocean. Walking among drumlins feels like walking through a dream of frozen movement, a place where the earth itself has been lulled into a deep, rhythmic slumber. This sense of organised, collective direction is deeply calming. It suggests that even in the aftermath of a great change, there is a beautiful, underlying order that remains, a steady orientation that points us toward our next destination. The order found in the drumlin fields is a result of the glacier's immense singular focus, but at its very edges, where the ice begins to yield to the sun, it creates a world of intricate, branching complexity. As the glacier melts, it releases an incredible volume of water, but this water does not flow in a single deep channel. Instead, because it is so heavily laden with silt and gravel, the river constantly chokes its own path, forcing the water to split and weave into 1,000 different interconnecting streams. This is known as a braided river. From above, it looks like a magnificent silver braid of hair laid across a wide grey valley. The streams are constantly shifting, merging, and parting, creating a landscape that is never the same from one hour to the next. In this shifting maze of water, the sound is a soft, continuous hiss, the sound of 1,000,000 tiny pebbles being rolled and smoothed by the current. A braided river is a beautiful metaphor for the way our lives unfold. We are not a single, unchanging path, but a collection of many streams, constantly diverging and coming back together, always moving toward the same distant ocean, even when the way forward seems complex. Nothing needs to be held too tightly in this shifting landscape. Just as the water finds its way through the gravel, your thoughts can find their way into the quiet delta of sleep. There is no need to navigate, no need to choose a single channel. Let the many streams of your mind simply flow and merge, becoming a soft silver braid of awareness that carries you into the dark. This silver braid of water eventually leads to a place of absolute crystalline stillness. In the coldest regions of the world, where a glacier has retreated and left behind a deep, isolated basin, the groundwater can freeze in a way that creates a stunning transparent floor known as black ice. This is not the dangerous ice found on winter roads, but a thick, flawlessly clear layer of frozen water that allows you to look deep into the heart of the earth. Because the water froze slowly and without any wind to disturb the surface, there are no bubbles, no cracks, and no white frost to block the view. You can see every stone on the bottom, every frozen blade of grass, and even the dark, silent depths of the lake itself, perfectly preserved beneath a pane of glass. It is like looking through a window into another world, a place of perfect clarity and absolute silence. Standing on this ice, you feel suspended in space, as if you are floating over a deep, dark dream. It is the ultimate expression of the glacier's gift, a moment of perfect transparency, where the world is stilled, the water is held, and everything is revealed in the quiet, honest light of the winter sun. As you gaze through this clear, dark window, the sky above begins to deepen into a rich, velvety indigo, and the first stars begin to appear, their light reflecting softly on the transparent surface of the ice, as we prepare to move toward the high, white peaks where the snow first begins its long, slow journey into stone. At the very summit of this journey, where the steep, jagged granite of the mountain meets the heavy, accumulating snowfield, a profound and quiet separation occurs. As the vast gathering body of the newly formed glacier becomes heavy enough to finally surrender to the gentle pull of gravity, it begins to slowly, deliberately pull away from the rock wall that cradled it. This peaceful, inevitable parting creates a massive singular fissure known as a bergschrund. Unlike the chaotic, shattered cracks that form further down the valley, as the ice moves over uneven ground, the bergschrund is a graceful, sweeping, continuous arc that beautifully borders the entire upper edge of the ice. It is a striking visual line of demarcation, a deep, blue-shadowed moat separating the unyielding ancient stone from the fluid, travelling ice. To stand at the edge of a bergschrund is to stand at the exact starting line of the glacier's incredibly long journey. It is the beautiful, silent space where the ice takes its first, imperceptible step away from its birthplace and begins its flowing life. It serves as a gentle, natural reminder that every great journey, every flowing river of change begins with a single quiet moment of letting go, of detaching softly from what has held us in order to move gracefully forward. As this newly moving body of ice navigates the steep, descending slopes directly below the bergschrund, the deeply uneven bedrock hidden beneath the surface forces the glacier to stretch and bend. In these steep, cascading sections known as icefalls, the ice does not simply shatter into formless, messy blocks. Instead, it breaks along deep, intersecting lines of tension, naturally carving out colossal, freestanding towers of pure, crystalline blue ice known as seracs. These magnificent frozen spires can easily reach the height of modern skyscrapers, standing together like a quiet, majestic forest of crystalline monuments guarding the high mountain pass. Because they are exposed to the open air on all sides, the wind and the sun sculpt their surfaces into smooth, breathtakingly elegant shapes. In the late afternoon, they catch the golden, horizontal rays of the setting sun, glowing intensely from within like softly lit azure lanterns against the darkening violet sky. Though they are born from the immense physical stress of the ice bending heavily over the mountain, they stand with absolute breathtaking dignity. They demonstrate beautifully how periods of profound tension, stretching, and shifting in our own lives can often sculpt us into structures of towering, unexpected strength and luminous beauty. Just as the heavy ice yields gracefully to the shape of the mountain, you can allow any remaining tension in your own body to gently fracture and fall away. Let the shoulders sink a millimeter deeper into the mattress, release the tiny muscles around the eyes, and notice how your breathing naturally finds its own effortless, unhurried pace. As the glacier continues to glide downward into flatter, relatively warmer altitudes, the interaction between the summer sun and the ice creates a landscape of delicate, almost impossible balance. Massive granite boulders, carried effortlessly from the high peaks, rest heavily upon the bright surface of the glacier, while the exposed white ice entirely surrounding them slowly melts under the warm, direct sun. These large, heavy stones act as perfect natural parasols. They cast cool, deep, protective shadows directly beneath them, completely shielding a single, solid column of ice from the heat of the day. Over the weeks and months of the alpine summer, the surrounding surface of the glacier lowers significantly, leaving these massive boulders resting perfectly balanced atop slender, glittering pedestals of frozen water. These whimsical, striking formations are affectionately known as glacier tables. They are beautiful monuments to the quiet power of shade and shelter, revealing how even a heavy, formidable burden, when placed perfectly, can naturally protect and preserve the delicate, vital foundation upon which it rests. In the wide, sweeping expanses where the glacier flattens out into broad, level plains of ice, the summer meltwater does not always immediately plunge into the dark, hidden depths of the crevasses. Instead, it gathers peacefully in slight, shallow depressions on the gleaming white surface, gradually forming vast, tranquil pools known as supraglacial lakes. Because the absolute bottom of these pools is made of pure, dense, flawlessly compressed glacial ice, the water takes on a colour of such absolute vibrating turquoise that it seems almost illuminated from below by a hidden light. These elevated sapphire lakes act as flawless, untouched mirrors for the passing clouds and the vast, sweeping arch of the atmosphere, completely undisturbed by the rushing currents or the dusty earth of the world below. They are temporary, floating oases of liquid light, existing only for a brief, beautiful season before the water peacefully finds its way down into the internal plumbing of the ice. To gaze into the still depths of a supraglacial lake is to see the boundless sky perfectly held and cradled by the earth, creating a space of pure, unblemished reflection. As the mind continues to drift, you can imagine your own thoughts becoming exactly like this, still, turquoise water, smoothly reflecting the quiet of the night without holding on to a single ripple or passing breeze. When we use the power of satellites to zoom far out and view the colossal, mind-bending scale of continental ice sheets, like the impossibly thick blankets of white covering Antarctica or Greenland, we discover that this frozen sea is not a single, uniform mass moving at one monotonous pace. Hidden seamlessly within the vast, slow-moving expanse of the ice sheet are powerful, highly concentrated corridors of rapidly flowing ice known beautifully as ice streams. They are literal, massive rivers of fast ice flowing gracefully within borders made entirely of slower, heavier ice. While the surrounding frozen landscape may only creep forward a few quiet inches a year, the ice stream surges ahead, sliding smoothly upon a soft, hidden, lubricating bed of saturated mud and liquid water, carrying millions of tons of ice toward the distant ocean with remarkable silent swiftness. The invisible boundaries between the fast-moving stream and the slow-moving sheet are marked by magnificent, sweeping shear margins, where the ice folds and stretches in a beautiful testament to the fluid, dynamic nature of the frozen world. It is deeply relaxing and deeply reassuring to realize that even within periods of our lives that feel entirely motionless, stuck, or frozen in place, there are always hidden, internal currents of profound progress, carrying us smoothly and swiftly forward beneath the surface. This hidden, internal energy takes on a breathtaking, almost mythical quality in the rare, remote regions where the deep, absolute cold of the glacier meets the fiery, resting heart of the Earth itself. In places like the sweeping volcanic highlands of Iceland, massive, heavy ice caps rest directly atop entirely dormant, but still warmly glowing, geothermal volcanoes. The gentle, persistent heat radiating constantly from the Earth's deep mantle does not violently erupt or shatter the ice. Instead, it slowly, patiently, and continuously melts the underside of the glacier, carving immense, echoing, vaulted chambers hidden entirely beneath hundreds of feet of solid protective ice. These geothermal ice caves are miraculous, quiet sanctuaries where fire and frost exist in perfect, peaceful harmony. The warm, mineral-rich steam gently rising from the dark bedrock coats, the deeply curved sapphire ice ceilings in delicate, intricate patterns of scalloped frost, while the air inside remains incredibly still and comfortably mild, an unexpected pocket of warmth safely held within a world of absolute cold. It is a stunning physical display of elemental balance, proving that even the most supposedly opposing forces in nature can find a way to quietly coexist, gracefully yielding to one another to create hidden spaces of deep warmth, shelter, and breathtaking beauty. As you rest here, safely sheltered in the comforting warmth of your own bed, allow the mind to completely soften its grip on the events of the day. There is absolutely nothing to solve right now, nothing heavy to carry, only the gentle, rhythmic, rising and falling motion of the breath. This very same rhythm of deep settling and slow rising occurs within the solid rock crust of the Earth itself, in a beautiful slow-motion process spanning tens of thousands of years. We know that the unimaginable, crushing weight of a continental ice sheet physically depresses the Earth's crust, pushing the bedrock down into the softer mantle. But when the long, deep planetary winter ends and the ice finally softly melts away, the Earth does not remain permanently indented. Freed from the immense burden, the entire continental plate begins to slowly, gracefully float back up toward the sky, a magnificent phenomenon known as isostatic rebound. This rising is so incredibly patient and unhurried that vast regions of the Northern Hemisphere, freed from their heavy, icy blankets over 10,000 years ago, are still quietly rising a few millimeters every single year. It is the Earth taking a long, deep, restorative breath inward after ages of heavy compression. It reminds us that no matter how long a heavy weight has rested upon us, our natural fundamental state is one of buoyancy, and we will always, inevitably, begin to softly rise back toward the light. As the Earth gently rises and the great heavy ice sheets recede into history, they leave behind magnificent winding signatures written beautifully in sand and stone across the newborn landscape. While the glacier was still heavy and thick, fast-flowing rivers of pressurized meltwater rushed through dark, winding tunnels at the very bottom of the ice, hidden completely from the sun. These hidden rivers carried vast amounts of perfectly smooth, water-tumbled gravel and soft golden sand. When the glacier eventually melts away completely, and the ice walls of these subterranean tunnels disappear into the air, the riverbed does not collapse. It is left standing alone on the landscape as a long, raised, winding ridge of earth known as an esker. From the perspective of a bird flying high above, an esker looks like a beautiful, sweeping, serpentine spine made of earth, meandering gracefully through dense green forests and across wide, open plains for dozens of miles. Because these raised ridges are composed of perfectly drained, soft sand, they remain dry even when the surrounding land is marshy, and they have been used for centuries by migrating animals and ancient travellers as natural, elevated, dry highways. They are the quiet, enduring ghosts of ancient rivers, providing a clear, elevated path forward, long after the ice and the water have gracefully faded into memory. The slowly receding ice also leaves behind quiet, sunken sanctuaries naturally and perfectly nestled into the earth. As the main body of a sweeping glacier retreats, massive isolated blocks of solid ice frequently break off and become completely buried in the soft, accumulating outwash plains of gravel and fine silt. Surrounded and perfectly insulated by the dark earth, these solitary blocks of deep winter ice can take hundreds of years to finally melt away in the dark. When they slowly dissolve, they do not leave behind a chaotic scar, but perfectly round, steep-sided, peaceful depressions in the landscape called kettles. Over the passing decades, these deep, quiet bowls naturally fill with fresh, falling rainwater and cool, upwelling groundwater, gently transforming into pristine, circular woodland ponds known as kettle lakes. Surrounded entirely by tall, whispering pine trees and covered in the delicate, floating green leaves of water lilies, a kettle lake is a place of profound, sheltered stillness, completely cut off from the rushing currents of wider rivers. They are beautiful, comforting reminders that the heavy, isolated fragments of the past, even the coldest ones we leave behind, eventually soften and melt, transforming naturally into spaces of deep reflection and new, vibrant, quiet life. As the impossibly still water of the woodland kettle lake perfectly reflects the endless starry night sky above, we are gently reminded that the elegant, sweeping physics of the flowing ice are not bound to our world alone. The quiet, unstoppable majesty of the glacier extends far out into the deep, breathless silence of the cosmos. Millions of miles away, on the freezing, rust-coloured, sweeping plains of Mars, vast, ancient glaciers of pure water ice lie safely and perfectly preserved beneath thick, protective blankets of red dust, waiting peacefully in a state of suspended animation. Even further into the dark, on the distant twilight world of Pluto, colossal glaciers made not of water, but of pure, soft, frozen nitrogen, slowly flow across the dwarf planet's expansive surface. These alien, celestial glaciers carve sweeping valleys and create vast, smooth plains in the exact same beautiful, fluid motion as the ice rivers of Earth, driven flawlessly by the same universal laws of gravity and patient, accumulating pressure. To know that rivers of ice are flowing softly and continuously through the outer darkness of the solar system is to feel a deep, calming connection to the wider, spinning universe. It shows us that the slow, peaceful rhythms of nature, the graceful yielding of solid form to deep time, are universal truths echoing beautifully across the stars. As we trace the slow, magnificent path of these celestial glaciers through the boundless dark, our perspective drifts softly back to the atmosphere of our own resting world, where the very air above the ice holds phenomena of almost impossible, sweeping geometry, waiting to unfold in the absolute silence of the high atmosphere. In this vast, freezing expanse of the polar atmosphere, where the air is far too cold and thin to hold ordinary billowing clouds, a different kind of delicate celestial architecture quietly takes shape. When the atmosphere is profoundly still, invisible water vapour freezes directly into billions of microscopic, perfectly flat hexagonal ice crystals. Because there is no wind to tumble them, these tiny geometric mirrors slowly drift downward through the sky, naturally aligning themselves horizontally, much like delicate silver leaves falling softly through a quiet forest. When the low golden light of the polar sun shines through this suspended invisible canopy of ice, the light is caught, bent, and refracted at a precise 22-degree angle. This flawless geometry gives birth to a breathtaking optical illusion known as parhelia, or more commonly, sundogs. Two brilliant, glowing phantom suns appear to manifest softly on either side of the true sun, connected by a faint, sweeping, luminous halo of white and pale rainbow light. It is a stunning revelation of how absolute cold and pure light can collaborate in the empty air, multiplying the warmth of the sun and painting the sky with quiet, geometric miracles. As the true sun eventually dips below the horizon, and the sky deepens into the velvety, star-strewn indigo of the polar night, These same drifting microscopic crystals continue their silent work, transitioning from catching the sun to capturing the light of the Earth. When the faint, steady glow of a distant research station, a small coastal town, or even the soft silver light of the low moon shines upward into the frozen air, the millions of flat, hovering ice crystals act as a vast, suspended mirror. They reflect the light perfectly downward, creating towering, vertical shafts of illumination called light pillars. These glowing columns stretch high into the dark heavens, resembling a quiet, ethereal forest of softly illuminated trees standing tall in the empty sky. They possess no physical substance. You could walk right through them and feel nothing but the crisp, cold air. Yet they stand with breathtaking visual strength, connecting the heavy, resting ground to the infinite dark above. They are a beautiful reminder that even the smallest, faintest light we produce can be caught, amplified, and elevated into something truly magnificent, reaching far beyond its quiet origins. Moving softly from the high, glowing atmosphere back down to the very edge of the glacier, where the ancient ice finally meets the freezing ocean, a different kind of crystalline structure is born in the dark. When the air temperature plummets dramatically, but the seawater is just beginning to freeze into a thin, fragile layer of new ice, the extreme contrast in temperature creates a rapid, breathtaking phenomenon. The relatively warm moisture from the sea is instantly drawn upward into the bitterly cold air, freezing immediately upon the surface of the new ice. This process builds incredibly intricate, feather-like structures known beautifully as frost flowers. They grow rapidly, wicking up concentrated salt and moisture from the brine below, sprawling across the dark, frozen ocean like a vast, crystalline meadow in full bloom. Each flower is unique, forming fragile, jagged petals of pure white frost that stand several inches high. To look out over the sea is to witness a frozen garden that has blossomed entirely overnight, a delicate oasis of lifelike beauty born purely from the quiet, unseen chemistry of the cold. As you picture this intricate, frozen meadow stretching out in the quiet dark, you can gently allow the intricate, busy thoughts of the day to simply freeze and settle. You do not need to tend to them right now. Allow the body to grow just a little bit heavier, sinking safely and deeply into the soft support beneath you, letting the mind rest like a quiet field of frost. When the ocean is too restless for a solid, unbroken sheet of ice to form, the rhythmic breathing of the sea creates a profoundly different, soothing pattern on the surface. As small, fragile fragments of slush and floating, fragile ice gather on the rolling water, the constant, gentle rocking of the ocean's swell repeatedly bumps them together. This soft, continuous friction naturally smooths away all their sharp, jagged edges. Slowly, over hours of gentle collisions, the slush forms into perfectly round, flat discs. As the water washes over their edges and freezes, it builds up a small, raised rim around each disc. This creates a vast, mesmerizing phenomenon known as pancake ice. From a slight distance, the dark, rhythmic ocean appears to be covered in endless miles of bright white, perfectly circular lily pads, all rising and falling in unified, hypnotic harmony with the swell. The sound they make is a soft, rhythmic shushing, a continuous, gentle sigh, as thousands of icy circles softly brush against one another in the dark. It is a stunning example of how natural friction and the chaotic movement of the sea do not always create destruction. Often, they gently smooth our edges, leaving behind perfect, comforting geometry and a deeply soothing collective rhythm. Sometimes, drifting slowly and majestically through these endless fields of floating lily pads, a massive tabular iceberg appears that defies the traditional expectation of pure, unbroken white. These are the beautifully striped icebergs of the polar seas. As a vast ice shelf floats on the ocean over many centuries, the freezing seawater at its base occasionally traps layers of dark organic sediment, crushed rock, and microscopic marine life. Additionally, deep internal crevasses on the surface of the ice can fill with pure blue meltwater that instantly refreezes. When a colossal section of the ice shelf eventually breaks free, tumbles into the sea, and rolls over to find its new centre of gravity, it reveals these hidden layers to the world. The iceberg becomes a floating diagonal canvas of striking colour. Pure, blinding white snow ice layered with bands of obsidian black, rich chocolate brown, translucent sapphire blue, and deep jade green. These stripes are the actual physical rings of the iceberg's long life, a visual timeline drawn in earth and water. They show us that true, enduring beauty is rarely perfectly uniform. It is the distinct, colourful layers of our varied experiences, the dark sediment of difficult times and the clear blue of peaceful days, that weave together to make us profoundly unique and wonderfully resilient. As these magnificent striped monuments of ice slowly drift into warmer waters and begin to gently melt, they release a sound that is as ancient as the ice itself. We know that as a glacier forms, it traps microscopic bubbles of atmospheric air, sealing them away under immense crushing pressure. When the iceberg finally dissolves in the ocean, this pressure is suddenly softly released. The tiny bubbles burst open as they hit the water, creating a continuous, effervescent crackling sound that sailors and scientists affectionately call Bergy Seltzer. If you were to sit quietly in a small boat near a melting iceberg, you would be completely enveloped by this sound. It is not a roar or a crash, but a delicate, fizzy, popping whisper that dances across the surface of the calm water. It sounds like a million tiny muted bells ringing at once. This is the literal sound of ancient breath escaping. It is the air from thousands of years ago, air that blew across prehistoric landscapes, finally returning to the modern sky. Listen closely to that imagined, quiet crackle in your mind and let it wash completely over you. Allow your own breath to settle into a slow, easy rhythm, releasing the pressurized air of your own day, letting it dissolve softly into the quiet night. While the ancient air floats upward into the sky, the heavy terrestrial burdens the iceberg has carried for millennia make a very different journey. Embedded deep within the melting ice are massive boulders, stones, and coarse gravel that the glacier plucked from the high mountain peaks thousands of years ago. As the ice silently melts away in the open ocean, it eventually loses its grip on these heavy stones. They fall freely from the belly of the iceberg, sinking slowly down through the dark, cold miles of the water column, until they finally land softly upon the deep, featureless mud of the abyssal plain. In geology, these are known simply as drop stones. On the flat, barren floor of the deep ocean, a single dropped boulder is a profound anomaly. It instantly becomes a vital, hard oasis in a desert of soft silt. Within a few short years, delicate deep-sea anemones, vibrant glass sponges, and elegant sea lilies attach themselves to the stone, transforming the isolated boulder into a thriving miniature ecosystem in the absolute dark. It is a deeply comforting thought that the heavy things we're finally forced to drop, the burdens we can no longer carry, do not simply vanish. They settle softly into the deep, where they provide the exact foundation needed for entirely new, unexpected, and beautiful forms of life to flourish. If we were to trace the path of those heavy stones backward, retracing the iceberg's journey back to the very coastline where it was born, we would find the monumental, sweeping architecture left behind by the ice, where a massive, heavy glacier once carved a deep, U-shaped valley far below the level of the sea and then eventually, quietly melted away. The ocean rushes in to gracefully fill the void. This creates a spectacular, sweeping geographical feature known as a fjord. A fjord is a deep, tranquil inlet of the sea, reaching miles inland, bordered on both sides by towering, sheer mountain cliffs that plunge straight down into the dark water. Because they are so deep and so perfectly protected from the open ocean winds by the giant rock walls that cradle them, the water within a fjord is exceptionally, almost unnervingly calm. It acts as a flawless dark mirror, reflecting the towering peaks and the drifting clouds with absolute breathtaking clarity. A fjord is a testament to the idea that the deep echoing hollows carved out of us by slow, heavy, grinding change are not meant to remain empty forever. They are simply waiting to be gently filled by something vast, deep, and profoundly peaceful, creating a beautiful, protected sanctuary where the water is always still. High above the calm waters of the fjord, halfway up the sweeping expanse of the remaining mountain glacier, there exists a perfect invisible boundary line that governs the life of the ice. It is known to glaciologists as the Fern line or the equilibrium line. Above this exact altitude, the air is cold enough that more soft snow falls and accumulates during the winter than can be melted by the summer sun. Below this altitude, the air is just warm enough that more ice melts away than can be replaced by the snow. The line itself is the exact narrow zone of perfect absolute balance. It is the place where the giving and the taking, the cold and the warmth, the accumulating and the melting are entirely equal. In the late days of the alpine summer, this boundary becomes visually striking. A soft, beautifully blurred border separating the bright, pure white of the new snow above from the ancient, dense blue ice exposed below. It is a physical, geographical manifestation of harmony in nature. You do not need to constantly balance everything in your life through sheer force or endless effort. Here, in this quiet, resting moment, equilibrium is naturally and effortlessly found. The mind can simply drift along this peaceful boundary, perfectly suspended between the waking world and the soft blue depths of sleep. The immense collective weight of these perfectly balanced glaciers does far more than carve beautiful valleys or drop stones into the sea. It silently dictates the very spin and rhythm of the entire planet. When the Earth enters a long, deep ice age and the great heavy ice sheets build up massively near the North and South poles, the sheer mass of the water is drawn tightly toward the planet's axis. Much like a spinning figure skater gently pulling their arms inward, this concentration of weight actually causes the entire Earth to spin slightly faster. Conversely, when the climate warms and the heavy ice softly melts, releasing billions of tons of water that flows outward toward the wider equator, the planet's rotation imperceptibly, gracefully slows down. The glaciers are the silent cosmic regulators of the Earth's celestial rhythm, gently tuning the exact length of our days over thousands of years. They alter the speed of the world without making a single sound. It is a perspective-widening realization that the deepest, slowest, and most quiet changes on the surface of our world have the profound power to affect our entire trajectory in the universe. It reminds us that there is no rush, no urgency, for even the spinning of the Earth itself knows how to gently slow its pace, easing softly into the vast, turning silence of the solar system. As the planet turns slowly in the dark, and the ancient ice continues its imperceptible flowing journey under the light of the distant stars, we prepare to look even closer at the quiet, living breath of the frozen world, where the boundaries between the solid earth and the fluid ice begin to softly blur. As we drift softly back down from the luminous, glowing halos of the high atmosphere, descending deep into the heavy, pressurized core of the flowing ice, a profound structural transformation reveals itself. When individual, delicate snowflakes first fall from the sky, they land in a chaotic, beautifully random arrangement. But deep within the heart of the glacier, under the crushing weight of thousands of tons of accumulating snow and the slow passage of centuries, a microscopic reorganization occurs. The individual scattered ice crystals begin to perfectly and continuously align their internal atomic planes. This profound shift transforms the ice into an anisotropic material, a scientific term meaning its physical properties change entirely depending on the direction of movement. The ice crystals align horizontally, forming layers that allow them to glide over one another with almost zero friction, much like a smooth, heavy deck of polished playing cards sliding effortlessly across a quiet table. This perfect internal alignment is the exact reason why a massive, seemingly rigid mountain of solid ice can flow down a valley like a slow, heavy liquid without shattering. It teaches us a deeply comforting truth, that under immense pressure, we do not need to break. We can simply, quietly realign our internal structure, finding a new, graceful way to yield and move forward. As you imagine these microscopic layers gliding smoothly past one another in the dark, you can allow the layers of your own tension to smoothly slide away. Let the jaw soften, drop the shoulders, and feel the gentle, heavy weight of relaxation sinking perfectly into place, even within this flawlessly aligned, incredibly dense lattice of solid stone ice. There is no such thing as absolute, unyielding rigidity. If you were to examine the ancient deep blue ice under an incredibly powerful lens, exploring the absolute darkness of the glacier's core, you would find that it is not entirely solid. At the exact microscopic intersections where three individual ice crystals meet, there exists a continuous, impossibly thin channel. These tiny branching pathways are known as liquid veins. Because of the complex shifting chemistry of water and the presence of minute trace minerals, the water within these tiny veins completely refuses to freeze, even when the surrounding temperature plunges well below zero. They form an intricate three-dimensional network of pure liquid, flowing silently through the solid, frozen architecture of the glacier. These microscopic veins act as the hidden, vital circulatory system of the ice, allowing dissolved minerals, trapped ancient gases, and even dormant microscopic life to travel slowly and safely through a seemingly impenetrable barrier. It is a profound, reassuring realization that no matter how frozen, blocked, or solid a situation may appear from the outside, there is always a network of fluidity, a hidden, quiet path for movement and life, weaving silently through the dark. This hidden, microscopic fluidity eventually meets the deepest, most primordial, and massive forces of the Earth, resulting in a landscape of striking, unexpected geometry. In the sweeping, isolated highlands of Iceland and the remote wilderness of British Columbia, there exist solitary mountains with an incredibly strange, perfectly flat silhouette. These towering geological formations are known as tuyas, and they are born from a spectacular muffled conflict hidden deep in the past. Long ago, during the biting depths of the last ice age, massive fiery volcanoes erupted directly beneath miles of solid, heavy glacial ice. The intense, radiant heat of the rising lava met the crushing, freezing weight of the overarching glacier. Because the ice sheet was so unimaginably thick and heavy, it did not simply melt away. Instead, it instantly chilled the erupting lava, shattering it into smooth, dark volcanic glass, while the immense weight of the ice physically pressed down upon the growing mountain, completely flattening its summit as it tried to rise. When the ice age finally ended and the glacier softly retreated into history, it left behind these towering, flat-topped monuments. A tuya is a majestic, silent record of a battle between the ultimate fire and the ultimate frost, where neither truly won, but instead compromised to create a shape of striking, resting stability. It is a beautiful reminder that the heaviest, most suppressing pressures we endure can sometimes cap our most chaotic energies, leaving us with a solid, perfectly level, and unshakable foundation. While the overwhelming weight of the ice can flatten a rising mountain from above, it also possesses the delicate power to sculpt a peak from the sides, creating the most iconic, piercing shapes in the natural world. When three or more separate, slow-moving glaciers are born on the different sweeping slopes of a single massive mountain peak, they slowly, relentlessly begin to carve backward into the stone, creating deep, shadowed, bowl-shaped amphitheatres, over hundreds of thousands of years of patient, grinding work. As these glaciers bite deeper into the heart of the mountain, their steep back walls eventually meet in the centre. The breathtaking result is a glacial horn. This is a perfectly carved, impossibly steep-sided pyramidal peak that points flawlessly toward the circling stars, much like the famous striking silhouette of the Matterhorn. The mountain is beautifully, perfectly sculpted, not by adding new material, but by the patient, meticulous, and continuous removal of the unnecessary stone. The heavy ice carves away everything that is not the absolute enduring core of the peak. This slow, grand sculpture reveals a deeply comforting truth, that our most profound, defining features are often shaped not by what we frantically gather, but by what is slowly, naturally worn away by time, leaving only our sharpest, clearest, and strongest essence reaching peacefully for the sky. The vast, uncountable tons of solid stone that are patiently carved away from these high peaks do not simply vanish into nothingness. They are transformed into a completely different kind of landscape far below the freezing altitudes. As the heavy ice relentlessly pulverizes the granite into a microscopic silky dust known as glacial flour, it prepares the earth for new life. When the glaciers inevitably melt and the vast muddy outwash plains eventually dry under the late golden light of the summer sun, the gentle prevailing winds sweep across the valleys. The wind effortlessly picks up this incredibly fine, weightless powder. It is carried aloft in massive, soft, rolling clouds, drifting peacefully for hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away from the jagged mountains. When this fine dust finally settles gently onto the earth, it builds up thick, golden layers of a soil known as loess. Because it was ground so perfectly fine by the ancient ice, loess is remarkably soft to the touch, highly porous, and incredibly rich in deep earth minerals, making it some of the most fertile, life-giving soil on the entire planet. Vast, rolling, emerald grasslands and the very foundation of ancient, thriving agriculture owe their quiet existence to this airborne glacial dust. It is a breathtaking cycle of natural transformation, where the hardest, coldest, most unyielding stone in the world is gently ground down and carried by the wind to become the softest, warmest cradle for new life. You too can allow the hard, unyielding parts of your day to be ground down into something soft and weightless. Let the mind become light, drifting effortlessly on the quiet, invisible currents of the night. This sweeping continental journey of the heavy ice is recorded not just in the soft, fertile soil of the plains, but etched permanently into the unyielding bedrock of the world. As a massive glacier drags heavy boulders and sharp stones across the earth, it carves long, perfectly parallel scratches into the solid rock below, known to geologists as glacial striations. These delicate linear grooves act as a perfect, enduring compass, showing the exact direction the ancient ice was moving across the landscape. When scientists look closely at the exposed bedrock in certain remote regions of South America, Africa, India, and Antarctica, they find striations that seem, at first glance, completely impossible, scratches indicating that massive glaciers somehow flowed directly out of the modern, warm, equatorial ocean. But when these scattered continents are visually pieced back together in the mind's eye, like a giant geological jigsaw puzzle, reforming the ancient supercontinent of Pangaea, the grooves align flawlessly. They form a single, unbroken, radiating map of a colossal, unified ice sheet that covered the very centre of the world over 300 million years ago. The ice holds the deep, permanent memory of a time when the divided Earth was completely whole. It is a profound, unifying thought, reminding us that no matter how scattered, distant, or separated things may seem on the surface today, beneath it all, we share a common, deeply connected history written in the very foundation of the Earth. This incredible capacity of the ice to hold on to the deep past extends far beyond ancient geology. It governs the very movement and flow of the glaciers we see today. We're accustomed to thinking of nature reacting instantly. A sudden dark storm immediately brings a rushing flood. But a massive glacier operates on a deeply delayed, incredibly patient timeline known in physics as its relaxation time. Because a glacier is so unimaginably large and its movement so profoundly slow, it does not immediately respond to a sudden heavy winter or a single, unusually warm summer. The blue ice you see flowing out of the snout of a high valley glacier today is actually reacting to the climate, the snowfall, and the temperature from decades, sometimes even centuries ago. The glacier is moving gracefully to the rhythm of a forgotten weather pattern, living peacefully and steadily in the past. This immense thermal and physical inertia makes the glacier profoundly stable. It is not easily shaken, panicked, or altered by the chaotic passing shifts of a single season. It moves with a slow, deliberate, unbothered purpose, a beautiful embodiment of profound emotional resilience. It teaches us the immense, calming value of not reacting instantly to every passing pressure or sudden change, but allowing ourselves the space to process slowly, moving forward with our own deep, unwavering momentum. When this deep, delayed momentum finally manifests into visible movement, it does not always happen in a perfectly steady, uniform slide. Sometimes, a glacier will experience a gentle, internal pulse of energy known as a kinematic wave. If an unusually heavy amount of snow falls high on the mountain over several consecutive years, this thick, heavy mass of new ice does not just smoothly and immediately join the rest of the flow. Instead, it travels down the long length of the glacier as a slow-motion swell, a localized rolling bulge of thicker, faster-moving ice that travels significantly faster than the actual individual molecules of ice around it. From high above, over the span of many years, you could watch this wave ripple silently and smoothly down the valley, much like a thick, slow pulse travelling softly through a heavy vein. It is a massive geological heartbeat, moving silently through the frozen river, pushing the ice forward with a steady, undulating rhythm. As this slow, heavy wave of ice travels its patient path down the mountain, you can gently align your own internal rhythm to its unhurried pace. Feel the steady, calming beat of your own heart, slow and constant in your chest, a quiet, reassuring pulse that anchors you deeply to the resting world around you, matching the deep time of the ice. In some of the highest, most arid mountain deserts on Earth, humanity has learned to carefully observe this slow, sustaining pulse of the ice and thoughtfully mirror its genius. In the remote, sweeping trans-Himalayan region of Ladakh, where liquid water is incredibly scarce in the early dry days of spring, the local communities have developed a breathtaking, peaceful collaboration with the deep cold. During the freezing, dark depths of winter, they gently pipe unneeded water from high mountain streams down into the valley, allowing it to spray softly and continuously into the sub-zero air. The water freezes instantly as it falls, gradually building magnificent, towering cones of solid ice that strongly resemble traditional sacred Buddhist shrines. These beautiful structures are known as ice stupas. Because of their perfect, steep conical geometry, they expose the absolute minimum amount of surface area to the warming sun, allowing them to remain completely frozen and solid, long after the flat, scattered snows of the valley have melted away. When the vital spring planting season finally arrives, these elegant artificial glaciers slowly, reliably begin to melt, providing a steady, gentle stream of life-giving water exactly when the parched earth needs it most. It is an inspiring, harmonious relationship with the cold, proving that we do not need to fight or fear the freezing stationary periods of our lives. We can purposefully, quietly gather our resources in the dark, building a solid, beautiful reservoir that will naturally, softly sustain us when the season of growth eventually returns. Looking outward from these brilliant conical towers of ice to encompass every sweeping valley glacier, every towering ice cap, and every sprawling, frozen continental sheet on the planet, we begin to truly grasp the staggering generosity of these quiet giants. Though they often reside in the most isolated, barren and seemingly inhospitable corners of the globe, glaciers are the ultimate silent guardians of life on Earth. Locked safely within their crystalline depths, held perfectly secure from contamination, drought and evaporation, is an astonishing 69% of all the fresh water on our planet. The vast, overwhelming majority of the water that makes life possible, the water that flows softly in our rivers, falls gently in our rain, and courses quietly through our very veins, is currently resting, dreaming in a state of perfect suspended animation within the ice. They are the planet's great white reservoirs, a colossal protective savings account of liquid light, waiting with infinite unwavering patience to know that the overwhelming majority of the world's most vital life-sustaining resource is peacefully asleep in the high mountains and the polar extremes is a deeply comforting, grounding thought. It is the ultimate reassurance that we are provided for, that the Earth holds exactly what we need in a quiet, frozen trust. As this immense, global reservoir of quiet, frozen water rests heavily under the pale, sweeping light of the moon, we can look even closer at the deep, hidden architecture that binds this frozen world together, drifting toward the invisible forces that shape the ice in the dark. As we trace the invisible forces that shape the ice in the dark, exploring the boundary where the solid earth meets the fluid frost, we uncover a hidden masterpiece of internal motion. When a massive valley glacier is forced to navigate the sharp, jagged corners of a winding mountain pass, it does not shatter or break against the unyielding stone. Instead, deep within its heavy, pressurized core, the ice behaves exactly like a silken, yielding dough being gently folded by a master baker. As the outer edges drag against the rock and the center flows swiftly forward, the ice folds over upon itself time and time again. This patient, immense pressure creates a mesmerizing internal structure known as foliation. It manifests as sweeping, alternating bands of perfectly clear, bubble-free sapphire ice, seamlessly interwoven with ribbons of brilliant milky white ice. If you were to slice deep into the glacier, you would not find a monotonous block of frozen water, but a colossal, flowing sculpture marbled with elegant, swirling veins of light and shadow. It is a breathtaking display of flexibility in the face of immense resistance. The ice reminds us that when we are forced to navigate the sharp, unexpected turns of our own lives, we do not need to shatter. We can yield, fold, and adapt, creating a complex, beautifully marbled internal strength that is far more resilient than rigid stone. While this beautifully folded, flexible core moves silently in the dark, the very top layer of the glacier, the surface exposed to the open, freezing air, behaves quite differently. Lacking the immense, crushing weight of the ice above it, the top 100 feet of the glacier is brittle, fracturing under the strain of movement to create those deep, yawning, shadowed canyons we know as crevasses. But these terrifying, jagged wounds in the ice possess a profound and comforting physical limit. A crevasse can almost never reach the very bottom of a deep glacier. At a depth of roughly 150 feet, the sheer weight of the overlying ice becomes so unimaginably heavy that it entirely changes the physical properties of the frozen water. At this exact depth, the ice reaches a state of plastic deformation, becoming soft, malleable, and incredibly yielding. The immense pressure physically forces the walls of any deep crack to gently squeeze together and heal perfectly shut. It is a stunning, geological promise. The fractures and wounds sustained on the surface can only go so deep. Beneath the cracked and weathered exterior, the immense, heavy core of the glacier remains flawlessly whole, unbroken, and perfectly sound. You can trust that within you, too, there is a deep, foundational core that remains entirely untouched by the fractures of the day. As you rest, let your awareness sink beneath the busy surface of your mind, descending into that quiet, unbroken, perfectly protected space. This deep, internal healing is sometimes aided by an unexpected invisible warmth that travels softly from the sunlit surface down into the freezing dark. During the bright golden afternoons of the Alpine summer, the surface snow naturally melts, creating tiny, delicate trickles of crystal clear water. Driven by gravity, this surface water eventually finds its way into the narrow fissures and deep, blue veins of the glacier, descending into a world where the ambient temperature is well below freezing. As the liquid water touches the ancient sub-zero ice, it naturally and quietly refreezes. But the laws of physics dictate a beautiful exchange. In order for water to transform from a fluid state back into a solid crystal, it must release the energy it absorbed from the sun. This gentle release of energy is known as latent heat. As millions of tiny droplets refreeze in the dark, they softly radiate warmth into the surrounding glacial core. It is a process that gently warms the entire interior of the mountain of ice from the inside out, softening the rigid structure and helping the glacier to flow with greater ease. It is a profound, unseen mechanism where the warmth gathered on the surface is lovingly carried into the coldest, darkest depths, providing a steady internal comfort exactly where it is needed most. The idea of warmth and ice existing in such intimate, quiet harmony is magnified to an astonishing scale when we look toward the very centre of our spinning world. We naturally associate glaciers with the bitter, howling extremes of the Arctic and Antarctic circles, but some of the most magnificent ancient ice on Earth rests perfectly positioned along the sweltering equator. In the high peaks of the Andes and resting atop the sweeping volcanic dome of Mount Kilimanjaro, magnificent tropical glaciers exist high in the thin, clear air. These serene, blindingly white caps of ancient ice sit perfectly undisturbed, floating miles above the humid, vibrant, endlessly active rainforests and sun-baked savannas below. They are islands of eternal winter existing completely surrounded by endless summer. To stand near one of these equatorial glaciers is to feel the intense, radiant heat of the tropical sun on your face while your hands touch ancient, freezing stone ice. It is the ultimate landscape of contrast, a geographical reassurance that even in the most heated, busy and energetic environments, it is perfectly possible to maintain a high, quiet sanctuary of absolute chill and undisturbed rest. There is always a space of cool, quiet stillness available to you, resting peacefully above the noise. Even within these high, quiet sanctuaries, the rhythm of movement is not always a steady, predictable march. While most glaciers flow with an imperceptible, constant and impossibly slow grace, a rare few possess a deeply rhythmic, pulsing heartbeat of movement known as a glacial surge. For decades, sometimes 50 or 100 years, a surging glacier will sit in a state of profound, heavy quiescence. It barely moves, resting in the high valleys, quietly accumulating snow, growing heavier and denser with infinite patience. To the world, it appears entirely asleep. Then, without any loud warning or seismic event, a threshold of mass and internal pressure is softly crossed. The glacier suddenly, gracefully surges forward. Over a single quiet season, it can advance at speeds up to 100 times faster than its normal pace, flowing down the valley in a majestic, slow-motion wave of blue ice, softly redistributing its immense weight before settling back into another half-century of peaceful rest. This cycle is a beautiful testament to the power of stored energy. It teaches us that periods of deep, profound, and seemingly unproductive rest are not a waste of time. They are absolutely essential. They are the quiet gathering of strength, the necessary stillness that precedes a great, effortless leap forward. Just as the surging glacier honours its deep need for rest, you can honour your own body's natural settling. Let the legs grow heavy, sinking like stones into the soft comfort of the bed. Let the chest rise and fall with the slow, unbothered rhythm of the sleeping ice, perfectly content to be absolutely still, gathering the quiet energy of the night. While the pulsing valley glaciers flow toward the lowlands, the vast flat ice shelves resting at the edge of the world engage in a much lighter, more musical rhythm. We have explored how the internal shifting of ice creates a deep, subsonic hum, but the immense floating platforms of Antarctica sing a completely different continuous song to the sky. As the relentless sweeping polar winds blow across the endless textured dunes of surface snow, the air pressure naturally shifts and flutters. This subtle, continuous aerodynamic vibration travels downward, transferring its energy directly into the solid ice. Because an ice shelf is hundreds of miles wide and floating freely upon the liquid ocean, it acts like the membrane of a colossal planetary drum. The entire continent of floating ice vibrates with a continuous, ultra-low frequency acoustic hum. Scientists monitoring these shelves listen to this deep, resonant singing to understand the structural health of the ice. The wind plays the frozen landscape like a majestic, silent instrument, transforming the chaotic energy of the storm into a steady, soothing, resonant drone that echoes out into the dark sea. It is the sound of the world finding a resonant harmony, a deep, sustaining note that underscores the silence of the polar night. If we look up into the sky that plays this colossal instrument, we find that the ice is not only a mirror for the wind, but a flawless, silent museum for the fire of the earth. Throughout the long, sprawling history of our planet, whenever a massive, distant volcano has violently erupted, from the ancient peaks of the Andes to the islands of the South Pacific, it has sent plumes of fine, grey ash high into the Earth's stratosphere. This microscopic volcanic dust is caught by the sweeping global jet streams, circling the planet in a high, invisible veil. Eventually, far away in the absolute quiet of the polar regions, this ash gently drifts down, falling softly with the winter snows. Over millennia, the snow compresses into ice, trapping these distinct paper-thin layers of dark volcanic ash, known beautifully as tephra. When scientists extract deep ice cores, they can see these distinct dark bands perfectly spaced through the clear blue ice, forming a flawless visual timeline of every great fire the Earth has ever known. It is a profoundly moving realization. The coldest, most peaceful places on Earth act as loving archivists for the most chaotic and violent moments of history. The ice catches the falling ashes of the past and holds them in perfect, absolute stillness, preserving the memory of the fire without holding on to any of the heat. This gentle preservation and release of the past eventually leads to a breathtaking burst of life, where the ice finally meets the Earth. At the very edge of a retreating valley glacier, a place known as the terminus, or the snout, one might expect to find a barren, frozen wasteland of crushed, lifeless rock. Instead, a miraculous, vibrant transformation quietly unfolds. The continuous, steady release of pure, mineral-rich meltwater from the belly of the glacier acts as an endless, gentle fountain in the rocky moraine. It creates a lush, thriving micro-wetland, a brilliant oasis of life nestled directly against the towering wall of blue ice. Here, the water is calm and braided, warming slightly in the sun. Delicate, bright green mosses and soft, sprawling mats of alpine lichens blanket the ground. Vibrant, nodding wildflowers, like the brilliant purple Arctic river beauty and the soft white tufts of alpine cotton, flourish in the rich, silty soil. Birds gather in the sheltered, quiet air, and small animals find a safe, irrigated haven. The absolute end of the glacier's long, grinding, freezing journey is not a place of desolation. It is a deeply nourishing gift to the landscape, a profound softening that creates a vibrant, warm sanctuary of life where the stone meets the water. It reminds us that every ending, every gentle melting away of the past, creates a fertile, watered ground for beautiful, unexpected new growth. When the massive flowing ice bypasses the land entirely and meets the deep rolling ocean, the release of the ice happens in a much more hidden, mysterious manner. We often picture calving as the dramatic, thunderous collapse of a towering ice cliff falling downward into the sea. But there is a silent, breathtaking form of release that happens entirely out of sight in the dark, freezing depths of the fjord. At the base of a tidewater glacier, hundreds of feet below the surface of the ocean, the relatively warm, salty seawater gently melts the underwater ice, carving deep, cavernous overhangs. Eventually, the natural buoyancy of the pure, frozen fresh water overcomes the grip of the glacier. Colossal chunks of blue ice quietly detach from the ocean floor. These submerged icebergs, known to mariners as shooters, begin a silent, graceful ascent through the dark water column. They float swiftly and smoothly upward, completely unseen, until they suddenly, peacefully break the surface of the ocean from below, emerging like giant resting leviathans coming up for a long, deep breath of air. They rise into the light without a sound, perfectly formed and flawlessly clean, bobbing gently in the water. It is a spectacular reminder that profound changes, great releases, and massive shifts in our own lives can happen entirely beneath the surface, rising quietly from the depths of our subconscious to finally emerge into the light of our awareness, bringing peace and a new equilibrium. This deep interaction between the ice and the ocean does far more than create floating sculptures. It acts as a colossal, invisible mechanism for healing the atmosphere of the entire planet. As the heavy glacier slowly grinds the mountain rock into that microscopic, weightless powder known as glacial flour, it unlocks vital, deeply buried minerals. When the meltwater rivers eventually carry this fine, milky silt out into the open ocean, the exposed minerals, particularly iron and silica, chemically react with the vast amounts of carbon dioxide dissolved in the seawater. Through a slow, incredibly patient process known as silicate weathering, this glacial dust naturally binds with the carbon, drawing it out of the active atmosphere and locking it away in heavy, solid compounds that sink safely and permanently to the dark, abyssal plains of the ocean floor. Without making a sound, without any swift or violent action, the slow, grinding patience of the ice is continuously, actively cleaning the air of the world. It is a monumental planetary sigh of relief, a quiet, ongoing purification. It is deeply calming to realize that the natural world, through its slowest, heaviest, and coldest processes, is constantly working to restore balance, to clear the air, and to sink the heavy elements safely into the deep, leaving the sky above clear, breathable, and deeply at peace. As we watch this fine silver dust drift slowly down through the dark, resting miles of the ocean water, we are drawn back to the highest, most delicate reaches of the mountain peaks, where the very first touch of the winter wind begins to shape the falling snow in ways that seem to defy gravity itself. As this freezing, moisture-laden wind sweeps across the highest, most exposed mountain ridges, it carries microscopic droplets of supercooled water. Water that remains entirely fluid, even though the air is well below the freezing point. When these invisible, drifting droplets finally touch the solid surface of a jagged rock or the bare, resting branches of a dormant alpine tree, they experience a sudden, magical transformation. Upon the very moment of contact, the liquid instantly crystallizes, freezing into delicate, branching needles of pure white ice. But unlike falling snow, which settles gently downward, this rime ice grows horizontally, reaching bravely out directly into the teeth of the oncoming wind. Over hours and days of a steady storm, this ice builds upon itself layer by layer, eventually encasing the trees in thick, sweeping armour of frost. These spectacular, towering formations are affectionately known as snow ghosts. They stand entirely still on the high ridges, leaning heavily into the empty air, resembling a silent, frozen gathering of ancient, white-robed figures watching over the valley. It is a stunning visual reminder that we do not always need to retreat from the cold winds of our lives. Sometimes the very things that challenge us can help build our most magnificent, enduring and beautiful layers of protection. This same persistent, sculpting wind continues its patient work along the very crests of the mountain ridges, carving the accumulating snow into breathtaking, sweeping overhangs known as cornices. As the wind blows steadily up the side of the mountain, it carries millions of loose snowflakes over the top of the ridge. Instead of simply falling down the other side, the snow catches in the aerodynamic eddy just over the lip, binding together and extending out over empty space. The resulting shape is an absolute marvel of natural architecture. A cornice forms a massive, graceful, curling lip of pure white snow, looking exactly like a towering, breaking ocean wave that has been perfectly frozen in time just before it crashes. These sweeping, suspended waves can stretch out for dozens of feet over the void, held together entirely by the microscopic, interlocking bonds of the snowflakes. To see a cornice bathed in the soft, peach-coloured light of dawn is to witness a moment of perfect, impossible suspension. It illustrates beautifully how something as light and fragile as a single snowflake, when joined with others in just the right way, can defy gravity and extend gracefully out into the unknown. As you visualize this beautiful frozen wave, allow your own body to sink further into the mattress. The breath settles into a deep, even rhythm. The mind can simply drift, knowing that you are safely supported, perfectly held, and completely secure. Beneath these suspended waves of snow, a profound and heavy quiet settles over the mountain landscape. A silence that is not merely the absence of sound, but a physical property of the snow itself. When fresh snow falls, it does not pack down into a solid, impenetrable layer. Instead, it creates an incredibly complex, microscopic maze of ice crystals, trapping vast amounts of empty air between the delicate six-sided flakes. This highly porous, airy structure acts exactly like an immense, natural soundproofing studio. When a sound wave travels through the crisp winter air and strikes the freshly fallen snow, it does not bounce back. It enters the maze of ice and air, where its acoustic energy is gently absorbed, softened, and completely dissipated into the microscopic spaces. This is why the world feels so magically, profoundly quiet during and immediately after a heavy snowfall. The snow is literally swallowing the noise of the world, wrapping the landscape in a thick acoustic blanket. It is a deeply soothing realization that nature possesses the power to naturally mute the chaos around us, offering a soft, blank canvas of perfect silence. You can invite that same absorbing silence into your own mind right now. Let the soft snow of your awareness gently absorb any lingering echoes of the day, leaving behind only a clean, quiet, and peaceful expanse. In the dry, thin air of the high altitudes, this quiet, sound-absorbing snow possesses another remarkably peaceful ability: the ability to simply vanish without ever melting into a puddle. When the mountain air is intensely cold but incredibly dry, and the bright, high-altitude sun shines directly upon the snowpack, a fascinating phase change occurs. The ice crystals do not transition into liquid water. Instead, through a gentle, invisible process called sublimation, the solid ice absorbs the light and transforms directly into a completely invisible water vapor, lifting softly and silently right off the surface of the mountain and disappearing into the sky. It is a slow, elegant fading away. Vast fields of snow can gradually lower and vanish over the course of a dry winter without a single drop of water ever touching the stone below. It is a beautiful, calming metaphor for letting go. Not every problem or heavy burden in our lives needs to be melted down through intense heat, tears, or messy, visible emotion. Sometimes, in the right, clear light, the things we have been carrying can simply sublimate. They can lose their solid, heavy form and drift gently away into the atmosphere, leaving us perfectly clean, entirely dry, and deeply at peace. When that same bright, high-altitude light strikes not the fresh, airy snow, but the dense, ancient sapphire ice of the deep glacier, it behaves in a way that seems almost technological. We know that the intense pressure of the glacier aligns the ice crystals into perfectly parallel horizontal planes, but this microscopic alignment does more than just allow the ice to flow. It transforms the entire glacier into a colossal, natural fibre optic cable. When the intense direct rays of the summer sun hit the surface of the clear blue ice, the light does not simply reflect off the top. It enters the crystal lattice and is perfectly guided downward along these microscopic aligned planes. The sunlight is transmitted deep into the heavy, dark heart of the mountain, travelling for dozens of feet through the solid stone ice without losing its brilliance. Because of this, the interior of a deep crevasse or an ice cave often glows with a radiant ambient blue luminescence that seems to be coming from the ice itself. The glacier is literally capturing the sunlight and carrying it safely into the deepest, darkest places. It is a beautiful reassurance that even when we feel submerged in the heavy, dark, pressurized periods of our lives, there is always a way for the light to reach us, travelling deep along our strongest, most aligned internal paths. Following that guided sapphire light down into the small water-filled melt holes on the surface of the ice, those quiet blue cryoconite pools we explored earlier, we find that life has mastered the art of waiting. Resting in the microscopic dust at the bottom of these tiny freezing pools are creatures known as water bears, or tardigrades. These microscopic eight-legged animals are perhaps the most resilient form of life on the entire planet. When the short alpine summer ends and the tiny blue pool freezes entirely solid, the tardigrade does not perish. It enters a state of deep, suspended animation called cryptobiosis. It naturally expels almost all the water from its tiny body, curls into a microscopic dehydrated sphere called a ton, and practically stops its own metabolism. In this profoundly deep sleep, it can survive the absolute biting cold of the glacial winter for years, decades, and perhaps even centuries. It requires no food, no water, and no warmth. It simply rests. And when the ice finally melts again, and the gentle sunlight returns to warm the pool, the tardigrade effortlessly absorbs the water, uncurls, and peacefully goes back to grazing on the microscopic algae as if no time had passed at all. It is the ultimate expression of patience, proving that we too can safely endure the frozen stationary seasons of our lives. We can simply tuck our energy inward, resting securely in the dark, knowing completely that we'll bloom again when the warmth inevitably returns. Nothing needs to be held too tightly right now. You can let the body enter its own deep, healing, restorative pause, perfectly safe in the quiet of the night. The microscopic dust that forms the foundation of these tiny freezing pools is a marvel of texture in its own right. We know that the glacier acts as a colossal millstone, grinding the bedrock of the mountain into glacial flour. But if you were to reach down into a dry glacial outwash plain and scoop up a handful of this ancient pulverized stone, your senses would be deeply surprised. We naturally expect rock dust to feel gritty, sharp, and abrasive, like the sand on a coastal beach. However, because the immense, continuous, and steady pressure of the ice has ground the stone down to an incredibly fine, microscopic level, glacial flour does not feel like sand at all. It feels exactly like the softest, most luxurious talcum powder or the finest, sifted baking flour. It is flawlessly smooth, completely devoid of any sharp edges, slipping effortlessly through your fingers like dry water. To rub this ancient stone dust between your hands is an incredibly soothing, tactile experience. It is the physical, tangible proof that the heaviest, most grinding and relentless pressures of the world do not always leave us sharp, brittle, or abrasive. In fact, if we allow the slow, patient processes of life to do their work, the greatest friction can ultimately render us incredibly soft, smooth, and refined, completely softening our sharpest edges until we are gentle to the touch. As this soft, pulverized earth is slowly pushed forward over centuries by the advancing snout of the glacier, it begins to accumulate into a colossal protective wall. When a glacier reaches its absolute maximum size, it acts like a gigantic, slow-moving bulldozer, ploughing billions of tons of earth, gravel and stone into a towering, sweeping ridge directly in front of it. When the climate finally warms and the ice softly melts away, this massive earthen wall remains standing perfectly intact. This sweeping protective barrier is known as a terminal moraine. These quiet, curved ridges of earth are the invisible architects of the world's most spectacular freshwater sanctuaries. The terminal moraines left behind by the great ice sheets acted as colossal natural dams, gently holding back the unimaginable volumes of rushing meltwater. They are the exact quiet reason why the breathtaking, vast Great Lakes of North America and the deep, serene, mirror-like expanse of Lake Geneva in Switzerland exist today. The earth pushed aside by the ice became the very arms that cradle the water. It is a profound, comforting thought that the heavy, difficult barriers pushed in front of us during times of intense, slow struggle often end up serving a beautiful, unforeseen purpose. When the ice finally melts and the struggle recedes, those very same walls remain to safely hold and protect the deep, clear waters of our new lives. The sheer, incomprehensible mass of these great continental ice sheets creates a physical phenomenon that defies our standard intuition of how the world works. We naturally assume that when a massive ice sheet melts, the water flows into the ocean and the sea level rises equally everywhere across the globe. But the ice sheets resting on Antarctica and Greenland are so unimaginably heavy, containing millions of cubic miles of dense, solid water, that they possess their own distinct gravitational field. Just as the moon pulls the tides of the ocean, the immense mass of the ice actually pulls the surrounding ocean water directly toward it. The sea level immediately surrounding Antarctica is physically permanently higher because the ocean is literally sloping upward, drawn toward the heavy gravity of the ice. When that ice eventually slowly melts, it loses this gravitational grip. The water that was being held close to the continent relaxes and softly flows away. This creates a breathtaking paradox. As the ice sheet melts, the sea level in the areas immediately surrounding the glacier actually drops. The ocean breathes out, releasing its tension, and settles back into a flatter, more relaxed state. It is a stunning reminder of the unseen magnetic pull our heaviest burdens can have on our surroundings. When we finally allow our heaviest, most frozen emotional weights to soften and melt away, the tense, built-up waters around us can finally relax, flowing softly away and leaving us on more stable, level ground. As the ground is finally revealed after tens of thousands of years beneath the heavy, freezing ice, it sometimes uncovers a secret that feels like pure, botanical magic. Deep within the permanently frozen soil, or permafrost, created by the ancient glaciers in the sweeping tundra of Siberia, scientists discovered the tiny, delicate, buried burrows of an Ice Age squirrel. Inside these perfectly frozen underground chambers, safely hidden away from the world for over 32,000 years, were the small, dormant seeds of a small flowering plant called the narrow-leafed campion. Because the permafrost acted as a flawless, stable, ultra-cold vault, the cellular structure of these ancient seeds remained perfectly intact. When botanists carefully brought these ancient seeds back into the gentle warmth and light of the modern day, a miraculous thing occurred. After 32 millennia of absolute freezing darkness, the seeds quietly, patiently germinated. They grew into beautiful, delicate white flowers, blooming softly in a world that had entirely changed since the last time they saw the sun. It is a deeply moving, perfectly calming truth to hold as you drift into sleep. No matter how deeply something beautiful has been buried, no matter how long the winter of the soul has lasted, the potential for life, for blooming, and for soft, vibrant beauty never truly dies. It simply rests. It waits in the quiet dark, holding perfectly still, trusting completely that the light will one day return to call it back into the warmth, just as the approaching dawn will soon call the sleeping world back to life. As we reach the very end of this long, quiet journey across the frozen world, we arrive at the most profound and comforting truth of the ice. When the oldest, deepest, most heavily pressurized core of a magnificent glacier finally meets the warming ocean, when the ancient sapphire ice that has been held in absolute silent suspension for millions of years finally surrenders its solid form, it is not an ending. It is a beautiful, boundless release. As the ancient ice merges seamlessly with the sea, it loses all its heavy, grinding weight. It becomes perfectly fluid, gracefully buoyant, and entirely free. The water molecules that were locked away in the freezing dark do not simply vanish or fade into nothingness. They gently dissolve into the vast global currents of the deep ocean. They travel smoothly across the equator. They warm in the golden light of the tropical sun, and they wash softly against the shores of distant sleeping continents. Eventually, the gentle heat of the sun will softly lift those very same molecules back into the open sky, transforming them from deep, heavy ocean water into a weightless, invisible vapor. They will ride the high atmospheric winds, floating peacefully and effortlessly above the turning world. They will drift over forests and plains, carried by the breath of the planet, until one quiet, incredibly still night, the air will begin to cool. And those ancient travelling molecules will crystallize in the dark, falling once again as delicate, pristine, six-sided snowflakes upon the highest, most silent mountain peak, beginning the entire magnificent journey all over again. It is the eternal, unbroken circle of water and time. The glacier, in all its immense, unhurried majesty, teaches us that nothing in this vast universe is ever truly lost. The heavy, frozen, stationary periods of our lives are simply one quiet phase of a much larger, endlessly renewing cycle. The physical form may change entirely, from drifting vapor to falling snow to solid bluestone ice to rushing clear water, but the vital, beautiful essence always remains exactly the same. It is a profound, natural promise that whatever melts away from us in this life is simply preparing to return in a new, lighter, and more beautiful way, carried softly on the gentle winds of tomorrow. Our long, slow, and peaceful journey across the ice is now complete. You have wandered safely through glowing sapphire caves, stood beneath the sweeping emerald light of the aurora, and listened closely to the quiet, rhythmic breathing of the frozen world. The mind has travelled far tonight, gracefully absorbing the deep, slow time of the mountains and the endless, resting expanse of the white snow. But now, as the journey comes to a close, you do not need to hold on to any of it. You do not need to remember the intricate shapes of the ice, or the gentle names of the winds, or the brilliant colours of the hidden alpine lakes. You have complete permission to let every single fact, every vivid image, and every lingering thought simply melt away. Let them all dissolve, softly and easily, just as the delicate spring snow dissolves into the welcoming, warming earth. There is no more information to gather. There are no more landscapes to cross. You have arrived safely at the ultimate destination, which is simply right here, resting securely in the quiet, comforting dark of your own space. Notice how the body feels entirely supported by the soft bed beneath you. The mattress is holding your weight perfectly and effortlessly, just as the deep, quiet ocean holds the massive floating ice. You do not need to hold yourself up anymore. Let the shoulders drop away from the ears. Let the arms become incredibly heavy, warm, and loose. Let the legs sink deeply and comfortably into the soft blankets. The air moving slowly in and out of your chest is the only rhythm that matters now. Breathe in, soft and slow. Breathe out, completely releasing the day. Each breath is a gentle, rhythmic wave, washing quietly over the mind, smoothing out the very last remaining ripples of thought. The surface of your awareness is becoming perfectly flat, flawlessly still, like a dark, quiet mountain lake perfectly reflecting the silver light of the midnight sky. There is absolutely nothing left to do. There is nowhere left to go. The busy world outside this room can easily wait for tomorrow. The cold winds have finally settled into a soft whisper. The heavy sky is completely clear. The vast earth is deeply resting, and you are peacefully resting right along with it. The mind is perfectly clear. The body is incredibly heavy and entirely safe. You're drifting, sinking deeper and deeper into a vast, beautiful and unbroken silence. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.